Like Councilmember Gabriel, we always need the moisture. We got thunder snow. Thunder snow, folks. That's always a treat.
Exciting today.
Yeah, it is. It's some excitement. All right. Members of the council, why don't we get started, and we'll begin our work session for April 27th, 2021. And we will convene officially and begin, and we will check with the city clerk for public comment, and I'll also look at our participant attendees here, see if we have anyone.
Mr. Mayor, just a point of information for you.
Yes,
I noticed a few moments ago that our agenda announces the meeting at 6:30. I think it's probably just an oversight. I know these work sessions always start at 6, so just a slight oversight. So if we don't have any public comment, there is a chance that at 6:30, some people might show up interested in public comment. So I just wanted to flag that for you. So that's to your attention as well.
Sharp eyes, Councilmember Harrington. City staff, are we beginning the work session at 6:30, or did we intend to begin at 6? And do we now need to wait until 6:30?
To start at 6.
Thank you, Assistant City Clerk. City Manager, are we good to go if it was noticed somewhere at 6:30?
Yeah, Mayor, I agree with the clerk. I'll let Ryan check, but we should see what the advertisement said.
Okay.
And see if we can figure out where the typos were and were not.
Yeah.
That was
Nancy's with us too.
Yeah, that was an oversight. It looks like I was just going to check that. The flyer that we send out to the public to see what that stated. My apologies.
We all make those kinds of mistakes. City clerks, plural. I'm not worried about it. The only thing I'm concerned about is if we run afoul of public meetings by getting started earlier than we'd noticed. But I'll let you guys let us know what you think.
We could ask the city attorney too, but we do publish all of our meeting stuff ahead of time. As far as like our resolution we adopt at the beginning of the year with our times, dates, and things to that nature. This is a copy of the notice that we sent out on Facebook and Newsflash. So I would leave it up to the council and the city attorney, but I do apologize for that oversight on the agenda.
City clerk, thank you so much, and really no apology needed. It's understandable. City attorney, do you think we're probably okay?
Yes.
All right. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I don't mean to put
yeah. What I don't know, Mayor, is what was published. If what was just on the screen was published, then we're fine.
Councilmember Harrington, what was it that brought your attention to the 6:30 time? I've forgotten already. I apologize.
Mr. Mayor, it's just the top of our agenda. Lists the time of the meeting at 6:30. So
I think what I'll do, folks, is just make sure that we check in for an adequate public comment time. Is everyone satisfied with that? Because the rest of it will be recorded and available. Does anyone have any concerns? I'm open to hearing them, but otherwise I think we'll just proceed. Everybody seems to be okay with that. They're not indicating any objection. All right. Okay. Well, we will adapt and keep moving. Sometimes we got a scheduling hiccup. Lord knows I'm the prince of that, so no criticism from me. Seeing no public comment at this time, we'll just go to the work session on the capital budget and turn it over to the city manager.
Good evening, Council. So to start off, I'll just kind of orient us on what we did at the last meeting, what we're expecting to do tonight and through the rest of the week. As you know, we did review the first really half of your capital construction budgets on Tuesday, April 13th. Tonight would constitute our second public discussion about your capital budgets. And then, as you know, we do have tomorrow evening scheduled as well to review capital budgets at 6 o'clock. What I will say about tomorrow is based on how readily we moved through our agenda at your last work session on April 13th, the remaining volume of material to review tonight seems really manageable. So we had originally proposed tomorrow as an overflow date, and at this point in time, it seems very reasonable to me that we will not need that unless the council would like to spend more time tomorrow. So we're starting tonight on page 84 of your capital budget book. The clerk will share the document in the Zoom platform so that the public and other folks can follow along. And council, of course, you received the capital budget workbook in a digital format. It also is on the city's website. If you need it, just let me know. But I'll give everyone a moment to get to page 84. As we move to the correct page, I'll start off by saying this section looks at our specific purpose tax or SPT funded projects. As you know, we do have some residual monies from our 2002 tax as well as from our 2010 tax. If the council don't have any questions in those arenas, I probably won't cover the expired taxes as they just finally spend it down, but instead focus our efforts and energy on the 2018 specific purpose tax funded projects. We have a number of staff members on board tonight to help us move through these projects. And I will mention to you that as we look at the SPT projects, some of them will look familiar, and that is because we talked about them at the last budget work session. Because in some cases, for particularly our USAC projects, our urban systems street projects, Bill Nye and Corcel, we've actually transferred money to the Capital Construction Fund, where those projects are actually budgeted, and that transfer occurred from SPT, where the voters approved money, into the Major Capital Construction Fund, which we have reviewed at your last meeting. So on those projects, we won't spend too much time since you've heard about them previously. Okay, so with that in mind, I think we'll start off largely on page 85, and this is where we start to talk about the current tax, the 2018 funded projects. We list them all out for you here, and on ensuing pages is detail about each of these projects. But I think for purposes of following along, we will focus on this page. I'm going to just start at the top, literally, and work our way down. And I invite you to ask any questions if you'd like more clarity on any project as we discuss them. Or if we skip over them too quickly, take me back there, and we're happy to provide all the detail that you need. So you see at the top of the page, the first listed project is the fire training tower. Of course, this one looks familiar because we talked about this in the last capital budget work session. Todd Feaser's here tonight. Our fire chief is not with us this evening, but I understand we are letting the project, and it will begin pretty quickly. And Todd, if there's anything you'd like to add to that, Dan told me to ask you, and that you were standing in for him. So,
yeah. Honorable Mayor, City Council, this one, as Janine indicated, it has been bid, it has been GMP'd, which is guaranteed maximum price, and right now I believe with design and engineering and some other necessities, we're roughly around $3,003,000. So there's roughly $350,000 remaining on the budget to use. Those funds will have to be used through the specific purpose tax ballot, I believe, the way it was indicated at the fire training facility. A few things that we still have coming forward are some potential art application that will need to probably come out of that funding, and then other improvements for equipment, whether they try to do more burn improvements or props to make sure that we get with training or not. But we're super excited. They have broken ground on that project and have actually started to pour foundation walls and come up out of the ground, and are getting ready to start setting the first course of block on the training tower and the burn building. So the fire department's very excited about this project. It also includes quite a bit of landscaping that cleans up the site too. and going to be a fantastic addition and training ability for our firefighters. I'll be happy to answer the questions.
Council, I'd add that we don't typically think of a fire training facilities beautification, but for the reasons that Todd mentioned, the landscape and whatnot, and just the sheer location of this project, I think it will be a nice new building on an entryway as folks come into town. I'm excited to see how it looks out there and see if it brings the sort of improvement in some green space that we can always use on the south entrance.
I remember hearing from the chief before that this new facility was a much needed upgrade from what our fire department had at its disposal in the past for training, and really in order to keep up with industry standards and best practices for training, this was a required upgrade, a required new facility in order to keep pace with advances in the training. And it's been a long time coming as well. I know that we wanted to complete this project earlier than this. This is something we had hoped to get taken care of a couple of years back, and we just weren't able to do it until now. So it's good to see that the final pieces are in place and it's moving forward. I didn't see any questions. Just a quick comment about a little bit of personal background I had on it, and I do recall those comments from the chief about it was very much necessary for our department to keep pace with developments and training.
Yeah, absolutely correct, Mayor. We think there may be some opportunity as well to work with some of our nearby regional departments to do some shared training at this facility. So it may have a regional effect as well as the local effect that we desperately need. Council, I have a question for you all. Is the share screen large enough in your opinion, or should the clerk enlarge that at all?
A little more would be good from my eyes.
Okay, that's kind of what I wondered. So Nancy, if we can make that any bigger, that's
Point
great.
of information. I need to get my glasses. So I'm looking at the other document, and even so, I'm having to get my glasses. So just want to let you know I'm not being rude. Thanks.
I opened the agenda from our agenda page, and you have a zoom feature when you do that. So you can make it larger yourself if you open it from the agenda page.
Thank you, both council members. Council members, you're always welcome to excuse yourself for a moment to get your glasses or whatever. You know, it's one of the silver linings of the being at home or the remote meetings. Councilmember Schuster, thanks for the tip on the opening it from the agenda. It hasn't magnified on my screen. There we go. Yeah, there it is. There it is. Thank you, Deputy Clerk, if that's you doing that.
Okay, so Council, we continue to be on page 85, and Todd will address the next couple of projects as well. These are Recreation Center and Ice and Event Center, some improvements funded by the taxpayers in those facilities. We've touched on these lightly, but not all of them. So Todd, I'll let you hit the high points that we haven't previously covered.
Thanks, Janine. There's 3 items that are listed there. I'm going to take them from the bottom up and let you know that the solar installations at the recreation facilities is completed, and we're finalizing the kiosk so that we can apply for the grant funding reimbursement. So we've completed those projects. The Recreation Center facility upgrades we spoke about last time were related to the COVID improvements as far as offices and entry into the facility that we have moved forward with, hoping that we'd get COVID funding. But we knew that if we didn't, we would probably fall back on the SBT for that. That does change our sights as to what we might want to do with future facility upgrades to the pool and to the real draw items, but this was kind of a necessity item. And Ice and Event Center facility upgrades, that amount that's planned in there is mostly for planning for how we get to what the future of the Ice and Event Center is going to look like. I'll be happy to answer any questions on those 3 items.
And I would note for you, Council, not only did we touch on these a little bit at the last meeting, but these are projects that we had in the previous or the current year's budget. The current year's budget being the budget that will precede the budget you're reviewing tonight. So these are budgeted projects as indicated on page 85 with a total remaining expenditure of $785,096.
Council members.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, City Manager. I was just going to say, council members, I really encourage you just to shoot from the hip. Just go for the questions. Don't seek recognition or anything. I think that's best for our budget. Just go ahead and pipe in when you do have a question. When the city manager indicates that she's ready to take questions after presenting, if you would please. Otherwise, city manager, just keep going.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So, Council, I'm moving to the next section. These are our city facilities improvements. Two of these projects, the police HVAC replacement and the city building renovation, are budgeted in the current year and will be carried forward as rebudgeted items into your new fiscal year, July 1st. The new project that we have starting in this upcoming year is the refinishing of the floors in the annex or the old Carnegie Library next to City Hall, $100,000 being budgeted for that in total. I know that you've all seen those floors and they are in desperate need, old wood floors, of being refinished in order to preserve them. So this will be a big undertaking, but the timing of it is good in this upcoming year as we'll be relocating staff out of those workspaces and hopefully starting to migrate folks out to the Municipal Operations Center on the north side of town. So we want to take advantage of that change in staffing to refinish those floors while we can.
City manager, that seems like an eyebrow raising amount for that, but it also occurs to me that there's hardwood flooring on all floors of that building, the basement, the main level, and the upper level. Is that correct?
That is correct. 3 levels of floor. I don't know the exact floor space, but I would say it's probably on par of 4,000 square feet. Todd might know off the top of his head, at least 4,000, I would think.
Yeah, so that helps. Please.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor, I don't have the square footage as quick as that, but we also do understand that some of the floors are going to require complete and total replacement and beyond resurfacing capabilities. So that number's planned to be able to absorb beyond just resurfacing. It's probably got a lot more replacement in it.
I appreciate that level of detail there on that. And I was wondering, you can only resurface those floors so many times before replacement's required. Thank you both.
Thanks for the questions. So as we move down, you'll see under recreational shared use paths and trails, we have 3 projects that we are carrying forward from the current fiscal year into the future. Then we have 2 projects, which are Spring Creek Trail Phase 2 for $60,000, and the second one being Greenbelt Trestle Bridge Boardwalk repairs for $50,000 that we will initiate in the upcoming year. Todd, you want to give us a quick description there?
Absolutely. The Spring Creek Trail Phase 2 is intended to get us from LaPrelle Park down to hopefully 17th Street. I was looking at the right up here, and I think I might have a typo in there. But that should be able to be enough money to hopefully get us almost connected to where the only gap that we'll have will be between 5th and 9th Street, 5th and 17th Street, which is doable and completable under development as development goes. So I think that's an important one. The Greenbelt Trestle Bridge Boardwalk repairs are important. As you know, we've got the historic Trestle Bridge that crosses the Laramie River and is part of the Greenbelt. And those boards and timbers that people walk on are not standard. You don't just go to Lowe's or Home Depot and buy those. You actually get those milled and replaced. And across the entire boardwalk takes replacement over time. The $300,000 that's indicated there is my swag at potentially a start to actually get away from using the trestle bridge. I do have concerns that we can't continue to maintain the historic trestle bridge as a pedestrian structure. It's going to degrade and it's going to get worse over time. And in my mind, I think we could span the river in that spot with a bridge that looks at the trestle bridge and do education and history training on the bridge of what their people are looking at when they look forward. It's just moving around on me, so I was kind of looking there.
Yeah, I think you hit them both, Todd. I'm on the Greenbelt Trestle Bridge. We are anticipating applying for a grant there, hopefully an 80% grant to a 20% match through TAP.
City Manager, would that be a grant so that we could preserve and continue use on the Trestle Bridge as opposed to the alternative structure, or would this be for the alternative structure?
Todd, I'll let you give the detail there.
Honorable Mayor, in my mind, I believe the Trestle Bridge, as much as I do love it, I think it becomes a better iconic symbol as a historical marker and educational piece than as a piece that we continue to use. I just don't have any experience with what it would take to replace beams that actually go into the river and all the work that takes. And it quite frankly, it's scary to me. It's daunting. And in my mind, a nice pedestrian bridge, much like we got over 22nd Street, with education and interpretive signage, does the job that I would like to do to maintain that history of the Trestle Bridge. May not be the most popular, but I think it's the best.
And I appreciate that. I guess what I'd like to do, if I could, just on this topic, and I'll make it quick, is ask you to investigate some possibilities with firms that have expertise in the area to see if we do have some options, because interaction with those kinds of historical features is really important for a community. And I know I'm talking to somebody that doesn't need to hear that from someone who doesn't know as much about it. But if I could, I'd encourage you to investigate at least some possibilities as you're in this early stage of the process before we've halted pedestrian use of that. And just ask you to come to the council with some possibilities. And it could very well be that you come to the council again and say, really, the most cost-effective, safest, and responsible choice is to phase out the use of that. But if I could encourage you to at least inform the council about what that would take to continue to use that, as it's such an important and historic feature in that part of the community. I don't know that that's necessarily. It's not really a directive, but since you're exploring options and we're approving an expenditure for it, I'd hope that would be seen as something reasonable that the council could hear more about in the future.
Absolutely. Happy to do so.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will take that into account. Thank you for the comments, Mayor. We'll move into the parks section, just moving down in that list. As you can see, there are a good handful of park projects that will continue from this fiscal year into the next, amounting to $1,050,000. We also have $572,440 of new projects that we are recommending begin in fiscal 21, starting July 1st. The first of those is the upgrade of the Auto Doll Shelter at Washington Park. And then I'll let Todd talk you through that one and the subsequent 3 projects that we expect to see there. And just for reference, Council, as Todd gets his mic unmuted, there are detailed descriptions of these projects on page 90 as well.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, Washington 1 and Auto Doll Shelter upgrades include improvements to the restroom facilities and the overall shelters as they function now. Washington 1 was built and constructed at a time and has been added onto and detracted from to where really the shelter height in and of itself is only about 6 to 7 feet on the interior and not really indicative of type of shelter that you would expect to see in your city's flagship park. So the improvement to that is developing a shelter that may be for upwards of 100 to 125 people to have that large gathering space where businesses can rent it and it gets used heavily and is really just commensurate with what our flagship park should look like. The Auto Doll Shelter upgrade is one of the shelters where we really struggle. First off, the restrooms were deemed to be non-ADA compliant, and some of the changes that were opted to be made in the restrooms to make them ADA compliant make them less than savory to use. If I do provide the example, if you have to go to the bathroom, there's no lock on the door and there's no barricade between the toilet facility and the door. So people can just throw the door open and there's nothing to protect views from either the women's or the men's side due to turn radiuses required for ADA access. Then we also have the the issue between that shelter and restrooms. And what we've done and what I've done in my past career is tried to separate restrooms away from rentable shelters. Oftentimes when people reserve a shelter, they believe that the restroom comes with it and that that shelter is no longer a public facility, or that restroom is no longer a public facility. And the new model that's really not any more cost prohibitive or any more expensive is to just move the restrooms off away from the facility so that they're still in use and still in connection, but they seem like a public use restroom, and then the shelter can have its shelter reservation and be separated by itself. You can also compound the fact that this shelter is really close to a heavily used basketball court that's very popular in this community. So rental of this facility is oftentimes difficult due to those proximities and doesn't lend itself to the most appropriate. And staff would just really like a chance to clean those items up. Janine, what was the next one that we were going to hit on? The Rotary Clubs Park at Grandview Heights, we've asked to add $20,000 to the design of that project. In research just last year, I started to do the RFQs and was visiting with some of my design firms. And as prices go up, so do design costs. And so the recommendation was to bring that cost up for design up to about $50,000 to see what we could do there. I hope to not spend that much money on that, but we'll see where we get. And then the last two we've been over the past few months with Land and Water Conservation Fund applications and Kiowa Park Playground and Washington Playground, which were both additionally funded through the ACRB last night that we will know in June. So we should have less SPT money spent on those, and we're using a combination of three sources to help fund those projects. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Todd, quick question. The Land and Water Conservation Fund grants on Kiowa and Washington, when do we expect an answer on those?
Honorable Mayor, we would expect, or Janine, sorry, I gave you a promotion. No, I'm just kidding. We're expecting to hear from those in September. We did get a note from the State Parks and Cultural Resources that our application was complete and that it was forwarded to the National Park Service for finalization, which is a little bit ahead of schedule, having that done in April. But as the federal government moves, I still don't anticipate knowing anything on final award until September of this year. And we hope to do those improvements next spring.
So we're hoping for good news in the fall.
And I'm really hoping we get some swings in there.
Yes, the swings are a matter of great importance to some members of the council. I appreciate the update on that. You know, it's good to hear about updates to these parks. They're such a visible thing that the city offers. So we really do like to hear about a little bit of this detail in some of these, both the recent projects and some of the others that we haven't talked about for a while.
Mayor, just a general question for Todd.
Please.
Todd, lots of very interesting projects for parks. I'm just wondering, you know, you detailed all of them. Do you feel like you have the adequate budget to do all the things that you want to do for the most part? I mean, reasonably speaking, you'd like to do a lot more, I'm sure, but just kind of curious about that.
Honorable Mayor, through you to Councilor Gabriel, I believe the SPT provides adequate budget to do vast improvements. I'm extremely concerned with what I'm trying to do is combine as many improvements with changes to existing infrastructure, whether it's trails and pathways and playgrounds, because our system is aging, and I do feel like sometimes I'm standing at the bottom of Mount Everest and I don't have an oxygen tank, and I'm not sure how high we're going to climb. But Scott's been very creative. We worked hard on grants, trying to match every penny that we talk about. We always try to match them with some sort of a grant to make sure we extend the value of the SPT and any funding that we potentially get. It's a lot of work too. I'm concerned about workload and staff, but I feel like we're funded pretty well, and we're going to make some big changes here over the next few years that are going to be seen and visible.
Great. Thank you.
That was a way to soft shoe around the question. I hope I did all right there.
Did fine.
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Gabriel, and for that answer, Assistant City Manager and council members. This is the time to be asking that type of question. I'm pleased to hear that Mr. Fieser feels like there is adequate funding for considerable upgrades, and I think that's a reflection of the community's willingness to approve SPT funds to invest in our parks infrastructure, which we're very grateful for. So please, yeah, this is the time to ask those types of questions, because if we want to make some tweaks or changes, this is your shot. Sorry, please go on.
Thanks, Mayor. I would add that, excuse me, we're so fortunate with the Land and Water Conservation Funds that have built pretty much every, I think, park and recreational amenity in town and continue to be available at a federal level. So that's really notable in our parks and recreation area. As we move into the next two areas, we have less ability to take these specific purpose tax funds, use them as seed money or grant match to make them go further, and that is unfortunate. So let me move down the list here, and we'll get to streets and storm drainage with Public Works, but we do have two reserves listed here, the Community Enhancement Reserve and the Aquifer Protection Reserve. As council will recall, these are initiatives approved by the voters but unbonded, and so funds trickle into these reserves annually for community enhancements, notably beautification and gateways and those kinds of activities, as well as aquifer protection. Streets and storm drainage are our next category of projects, so we'll give Todd a break and switch over to our Public Works Director. You will see, Council, that we have $2.3 million that we are carrying forward as budgeted projects that will occur across the budget cycle from current to next fiscal year. And then we are moving forward to initiate $4.3 million of additional work that will commence or be continued in fiscal 21. So I will let Brooks focus in on the new projects in fiscal 22, which starts July 1st. And the first of those is the drainage ponds at 22nd Street.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, good evening. The optimized drainage ponds, that project will basically replace outlet structures in 3 different detention ponds along 22nd Street. We just received RFQs from design engineers for that project, and so we're just going to be getting that under design soon. You'll see that item coming to you in the next few weeks for award. 15th Street reconstruction. I think we've all heard about. That's between Grand Avenue and Sheridan Street, and that bid award will be coming to you next week. As you recall, we do have some mineral royalty grant money associated with that project, which helped free up a little SPT money. So that'll be coming for award next week. The 11th Street reconstruction is another big project, and it's coupled with a large water project, one of our top priority water projects. The water will actually be in 2 alleys and then down 11th Street between Curtis and Mitchell. And then the SPT funds will be used to repave that portion of the street between Curtis and Mitchell. The Flint Street rehabilitation, that is, we're partnering with YDOT on that. YDOT is putting in a traffic signal next year at 3rd and Flint. And when we heard they were doing that, we went out and took a look at that area, and between Grand and 4th Street, or I'm sorry, between 3rd and 4th Street. The PCI is pretty low there. The asphalt was in pretty poor condition, and we figured with the coming signal light that was going to increase traffic there, and so we're partnering with YDOT to get that paved during that project. The 9th Street reconstruction phase 2 project is basically reconstruction of 9th Street between Harney and Shields. That's the area we've talked about a few times. I know Councilor Gabriel's asked about it. It's kind of like a roller coaster through there. So that's going to be a full reconstruction, and we are going out asking for RFQs for design on that next week. That'll go out, and we'll be soliciting design engineers for that project. The 19th Street reconstruction is coupled with a water and sewer project. That one will, same thing as reconstruction and will address ADA, sidewalks, and curb and gutter all at the same time. One of the big projects coming forward, as you know, is Wyoming Avenue and the West Laramie storm water outfall. Currently under design. This will be a multi-year project. We've got a large stormwater system going in. We're putting in water lines under all paved surfaces. And we also have some MRG money associated with that project. Countywide consensus funds that we transferred over for that into that project. But yeah, multi-year project, very big, and I think it's going to be a huge benefit for West Laramie and that area down Wyoming Avenue. The 30th and Reynolds intersection, you guys awarded that last week, I believe. So we'll be getting under construction on that as soon as school gets out is the plan. We don't want to interfere with all the school buses and stuff. So that project will be this summer. And let's see, Cedar Street reconstruction. That's between Clark and Harney. We actually are going, we've decided we're taking this out right now, soliciting design engineers at the same time with the 9th Street reconstruction. They're virtually kind of the same type of project. So we're taking them at the same time, get one design engineer to do both projects. And then Cedar Street, if we can get that design started here soon, we'll be prepared for construction for next summer, for next construction season. Originally the funds are going to become available in 22 for Cedar reconstruction, but that's in July. And we wouldn't have enough time to do that project next summer. So it would have bumped to 23. So is what we're planning on doing at this point is moving forward and probably amending that portion of the budget so that we can do that project next summer. Cedar Street is degrading very quickly. I had engineers in here today telling me it's falling apart. I went out and drove it, and it's really bad. And so we're kind of expediting that project and getting it going. And I know we actually last year, I think we had it out even a year back, and Councilor Stalder requested that we move that up, and we did that. But it's just falling apart quicker than we had anticipated. So as far as our SPT street stuff goes, that's the stuff in the next year or two. Everything else we've got on there is kind of in the out years. So if you have any questions on any of those projects, I'd be happy to take them.
Council, as you're pondering your questions, I'll add that I prefaced this section by noting that we really don't have a lot of grant funding feeding into our street and storm drainage projects. Brooks mentioned that we do have a little bit of mineral royalty grant on 15th Street. We also did apply for mineral royalty grant, both those grants coming through the state. We applied for MRG for the Wyoming Avenue project. We were denied, but we're able to repurpose the last of the capital consensus grant funds the city has from a previous project, and the state approved moving those funds into this project. So in total, I think we have some, I don't know what the total amount is on 15th Street. Brooks, if you could look it up, but if I remember correctly, we have $500,000 or less in grant funding matching to these projects. And that's unfortunate. You'll remember the state did have available to the city's capital construction grant program not too many years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. That was eliminated as part of the budget cuts. And so as that was eliminated, it's created a lot more competition for mineral royalty grants that do come through the state. And so we're just not as successful in bringing those grants in, unfortunately, which is disappointing because I know we had hoped to stretch our SPT dollars as far as possible with state grants like we did with the 2010 tax. But changes in the lay of the land at the Capitol are going to make that a very difficult goal for us.
May I ask, but there's a lot of things coming down the pipe for infrastructure plans for the feds. So do we have things in a state that if we can get that federal funding that we could crank things up? Thanks.
Yeah, Councilor O'Doherty, that's a great question, and I was hoping to address that. I'll remind you, we're tracking the American Recovery Plan funds and also the possibility of an infrastructure bill coming out of the federal congressional building here in the next few months. We do have obviously a lot of pent-up demand and need for capital construction monies for streets and storm and water and sewer and all those good things. And we do have projects that are going under design. So our hope is that when we sit down with you all in an extra budget work session this summer, that we can bring forward projects that will be eligible for those federal funds, the ones that are currently available and those that might become available. And Brooks, if you would like to add anything in more detail, or Malia, please do.
Janine, I just wanted to point out that WAM put out a release a couple of weeks ago on the American Rescue Plan funding. The state's going to get $175 million, Laramie about 4.99, and it says that the funding will be more flexible, allowing for investment in water, sewer, broadband infrastructure projects, and it will be 2 separate payments. So I guess on what Councilor O'Doherty had talked about, is this almost $5 million available to the city going to be looked at for some of these infrastructure projects?
Yes, through you, Mayor, Councilor Gabriel, that is exactly the funding I was referring to when I said and I said that in the budget message at the beginning of the booklet, that we're going to, once we get more detail, because the feds are still promulgating maybe some rules about that, the funding, in addition to the general background you just provided. Once we have full detail, we'll sit down with the council in June or July and look at how we might spend those funds. But as you said, water and sewer are high priority and clearly allowable. So that's really exciting. I'm also, this is off topic slightly, but just so you know, we're having conversations about the broadband plan that was recommended in your economic development plan as well, and looking at that, since that is a clearly eligible expense as well. What Malia will tell you is we know that this roughly $5 million, $4.99 million is going to come to us in 2 disbursements over 2 years. And $5 million is a lot, but as you know, when we're looking at all of these very expensive projects for public works, $5 million doesn't really go as far as we'd like it to sometimes, but it's very welcome in light of the fact that our state grants for public works kind of projects have dwindled.
Great, thank you.
May I ask, Brooks, I think you may have said it just as you started and I was busy trying to find my place. So Grafton Street is still on there. Did you already mention that, why that's still on there? Because it looked pretty done to me.
Yeah, Councilor O'Doherty, through you, Mayor. Grafton is basically done. There's some work that the contractor has to finish up as far as they're going to chip seal it, and they've got to wait for the warmer weather to do that. That's why it's still in the plan, because it's technically still active, but for the most part, it's done.
All right. It looks really good.
Thanks.
Good question.
There's really not much that looks better than new pavement, huh? It's pretty good.
Especially when you need it really bad. That's good questions and input. I don't want to move on without an opportunity to raise this issue right now for the council, which is the council knows that the staff will bring us suggestions forward, but I wondered, does the council need to take a look at making some policy changes at the spending level here so that staff can better prepare and factor in some of this volatility we keep talking about in materials and labor for these infrastructure projects that we're not doing right now, and that for the year to come and the year after that, we might better be able to do that? Do we have flexibility in the budget to do that, or are we just going to have to do the best we can given our fiscal limitations? Is there anything we can change or authorize? And
that question's for me.
For you, for Brooks, Malia, anybody that wants to throw anything in there that you might have a suggestion. I don't know. I see Malia's got a hand up there, City Manager. Should we go to Malia?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Operating Officer Brown, please, if you have anything for us on that.
Yes,
Council. I think at this point we wanted to, I think Brooks and I have a plan in that as things come in, we're going to prioritize the capital we have right now and to put extra reserves. I mean, because some stuff, it's more in water, I think, and Brooks can comment on this versus the streets. The streets are coming in better than the water pipe, and that's really where it's kind of happening, that the increases are in the pipe. So I think what we did, like on 3rd Street, is reconfigure. You know, we rejected that bid. We're going through and looking at what really needs to be done as critical. And if the prices go up, we can see if we can fit it into our schedule the following year. So I think we have a plan. We're not, I think putting reserves doesn't help it at all. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you. And like I said, you know, your city council here trusts that you guys will make those recommendations for us, but sometimes we wonder if you might need to hear that inclination from the council first, because that is a concern. I think we're all worried about it when we hear about that, because there's so little we can do to impact it other than to try to plan for it. So I appreciate that, and sounds like a plan.
I will say and add to that, Mayor, you know, we saw this sort of increase in prices, this dramatic increase in pricing in, I got to think what year that was, probably 2009, 10, 11, following the housing crash. So something that I remember Malia and I spent a lot of time talking about not too long ago. So we'll keep monitoring that, and we'll definitely bring the council in the loop if we get to a point where, you know, we really need to reprioritize. We're going to move into our water and sanitary sewer wastewater system next, and I will let you know from like a fund and fiduciary standpoint, in the water fund, we are mindful of the fact that these escalating prices can affect rates. Particularly on the wastewater side, which is a tighter budget right now than the water side is. So we're trying to take that into account too, and we'll bring you all of that information in subsequent months so you can look at that.
Okay.
Before we move off Brooks of Street, I just wanted to point one thing out to the council that is not in the current year or in the upcoming fiscal year, but we are planning for fiscal 23. And that is Boswell Drive. And I'm only mentioning this because, like North 9th Street, which Brooks referred to as a roller coaster, Boswell Drive on the south end of town is also a bit of a roller coaster. And I know that you all get questions periodically about these really bad areas of street. So I want to mention to you, of course, we know as staff, just like you know, and the folks that live there know, that Boswell Drive is one in some of the worst soil conditions in town, where we get all that heaving and freezing and thawing. And right now we know the PCI, that street is about 31. And so we are in the planning phases to begin reconstruction of that street, hopefully in fiscal 24. For all the reasons we just discussed, escalation in prices for existing projects, I hope we're going to be able to get to that. It really needs it. But I just wanted to point that out as a future year, 1 year out project that we hope to start working on, so that when you get questions, you'll be ready to answer that. And Brooks, you can add anything if you want, or if not, that's okay too. Okay. All right, so that kind of wraps up our specific purpose tax projects. Council, on page 86, there is a summary of the project-related revenue, really grants that are coming in with SPT, if you ever want to reference back to that. And then that pretty much wraps up our 2018 specific purpose tax projects, and we would move next to water and wastewater on page 93. While we're outgoing there, if you have any questions on wrapping up the specific purpose tax, we can do that.
Anybody? Okay.
Okay. So Council, starting on page 93, I'll just touch base quickly on our vehicle and equipment replacement planned expenditures. You do have $344,912 that is not rebudgeted, excuse me, that is new planned replacement vehicles and fleet. That's shown at the top of your page there, and then you'll see the detail for vehicle pieces and equipment pieces as you move down page 93. The total amount of water fund fleet over the last 4 years replaced is $468,659. In accordance with your carbon reduction program, we are adding on $12,000 to those pieces of vehicle. And then in equipment, our add-on is $42,000 against a total 4-year expenditure of $737,159. If you have any questions on any of these specific replacements, please let us know. And I think I might ask Malia or Brooks, whoever wants to talk a little bit about some of the change we've made in our fleet management program this year to share vehicles across funds and try to lower our expenses in general fund and make our equipment last longer. Do either of you want to take that? Malia, thank you.
Yes, Mayor and Council, basically what we have looked at or what we were trying to do with the fleet program was, I said the general fund really does not have the money that it needs, and we're trading away vehicles that seems maybe we should trade them sooner and trade them for the price instead of giving them up to the auto places to pay for it out of the general fund, so that when we start doing carbon-free hybrids, things like that, we can get the fleet done faster that way and try to move the product over to the general fund, the streets and the parks. And so we've been looking at that in our fleet and started actually last year. So that has worked well. So the enterprise funds are looking at the hybrids, doing hybrids. We're moving trucks over to the general fund, paying for them like we would a trade-in. And it allows that equipment to get better, to have better equipment over in streets versus no equipment or no park equipment. So that's what we've been doing. And I don't know if Brooks wants to add anything, if I missed anything.
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. It's, just basically trying to get something over to general fund areas that they can still use at least for a year or two before we trade it off. Is one of the things we were seeing was the trade-in values we were getting from dealerships or what have you were pretty low, and we thought, gosh, with that cost, we might be able to get another year or two out of it, over in the general fund. So, so far it's been a good program. We've done it with a couple of vehicles, and it's helped the general fund out quite a bit.
Well, excuse me, when you say over in the general fund, I think you might want to explain what that means, because you're really not putting vehicles in the fund. You're using them for, it took me a while to figure out what everybody's talking about. You're putting them in something that's funded by the general fund. Another need we have for the vehicles, like you said, I think you said the parks and that kind of thing. Is that
Sure.
what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm
I think
sorry.
we're using shorthand that the public and I was having trouble with.
Yes. So yes, parks, street, things like that. So they'd go over to parks or streets, and basically the general fund would pay for that trade-in value, and then that vehicle would be used by like streets or parks.
Good.
Thanks.
Good.
That's a good idea.
Good question and clarification. I think it does sometimes become the case that we kind of have a general idea, but we're having a public meeting, even though it's on video, and it's good to kind of address that. The original source for the dollars for that stuff is coming out of our general fund as opposed to one of the other specified funds that the city operates. The franchise stuff that we put in place for instance, our water system or our solid waste or something like that. is separate from the general fund, and the general fund would pay for instance, vehicles or things needed for the Parks Department. That's allocated out of the general fund and then over to that department. And hopefully that's not too much explanation, but I think it's worth talking about. Yeah.
I did notice that like painful trade-in that we were getting for things. So I really appreciate this plan. Thanks.
Oh yeah, and I wonder if that's getting better now, because I know there's a manufacturing crunch now that the automotive industry is dealing with, and that is upping the value of even used vehicles. I don't know how much lag time that has, and probably it's still from a carbon policy perspective a good idea to get the use that we can out of our existing equipment before we go buy new stuff. But I don't know enough about it to be sure. So I agree with Councilor O'Doherty. It sounds like a good plan for the time being.
Thanks, Mayor and Councilor O'Doherty. And for the clarifying question, I like to characterize it as we let the general fund operations, street, storm, sewer, parks, as we said, which are less well-funded, less robustly funded, pay the trade-in value and kind of get the hand-me-down, if you will. Kind of like when your mom would bring you a bag of clothes from the cousin's house, right? But those pieces of even hand-me-down fleet and equipment in the general fund are better quality in some cases than what those folks are operating with currently. So it's sort of a win-win for both our enterprise funds and our general fund. So just finishing up on page 93, we've shown you the 4-year total here for anticipated replacements of vehicle and equipment. I'll note that there's one vehicle being replaced in the upcoming fiscal year, and there are 3 pieces of equipment being replaced in the upcoming fiscal year, with all the remaining items shown there in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th years. And then we will move into capital construction projects in the water fund on the next page, which is page 94. Like we did in the specific purpose tax funded projects council, I will focus on projects that are being rebudgeted from current to forthcoming fiscal year, and then we'll spend the most emphasis on projects that we're going to initiate newly starting July 1st in fiscal 21-22. So starting at the top of page 94, in our meters cost center, we do have one project that is continuing forward with, and this is ongoing meter replacement. So you can see that we're carrying forward $90,912 from the current year into the upcoming year, and then filling in each year with $60,000 in fiscals 21-2 and fiscal 22-23, because of course this is an ongoing phased replacement program for meter vaults. With no questions there, we'll do maybe some more exciting projects. At least I think they're more exciting in our pumps and wells section. So you can see we have $1,078,275 that we will rebudget across fiscal years. We have $3.5 million in new projects that are in new funding that will come into this section starting July 1st, with the first of those noted projects being our PRV pressure reducing valve replacement. Like the meter vault installation and replacement, this is an ongoing program where every so many years we replace one of the PRVs. Brooks may give you a little bit of detail about where and when we're going to be replacing this year and into next.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor, City Council, the $400,000 PRV replacement in 22 is the Bill Nye PRV vault. It's currently located right in the middle of the alignment for the future Bill Nye Avenue, and so we need to get that vault and equipment basically out of the way. And so we'll be moving that out of the way, and it's quite a few years old and is due for replacement anyway. So a good project to get that moved out of the way of the street and upgrade that facility for that. The other one we're working on right now, the PRV installation at Venture Drive. We're doing design of that right now, working on easements for that vault. but it's the installation of that is in fiscal year 23. But we should by the end of the year have that design wrapped up and on the shelf, so that when that project's ready to move forward, we're good to go.
Thanks, Brooks. Council, just for page references, the detail of each of these projects begins on page 99. That's where the PRV project Brooks just described can be found. The next project that we see recommending new allocation of funds for in the pumps and wells section is a project you're fairly familiar with, which is our 41T3. This is funding of $2.6 million, not for the vertical drilling of the well, but for what I call the horizontal infrastructure, the piping and treatment that we'll need to connect that well into our system. That is described on page 101, showing the total funding source and revenue. This is wholly funded out of our water fund. We're ready to drill that well in just a few weeks here, and then this will allow us in the following year to connect it into the system. The next item here is the City Springs property purchase, which is $500,000. This is reflected on page 102 in detail. And this is I guess I would say this is a placeholder in the budget. As many of you will recall, the City Springs property, we've been in discussion for a number of years with the Union Pacific Railroad about that property. And whether the city will need to actually purchase it outright versus the arrangement that we've had for many decades with Union Pacific Railroad. So this is a placeholder in the budget in the event that that does become the case, that we need to make a deeded purchase of this property. And those are all the pumps and wells projects. So if there are no questions on those three new ones, I'll move forward, but I'll wait for a second for you all to take that in.
Anything else on that, City Council? Brooks, I think I caught you. You had thought about maybe making another comment. Did you get everything you needed? Okay. All right.
Okay. So we have a number of new projects in the transmission section of the water fund. In total, we've got, let's see. Sorry, I missed a page here. I'll let Brooks start giving you the details, starting with the 3rd Street Utility Rehabilitation Project. We do have $3.8 million already seated there. We'll be adding another $950,000 in the upcoming year, and then 2.1 in the following year, $2.1 million, for a total project cost here of $7.5 million. So you can see this is a very large project. So let Brooks talk to you about that, and I'll find the total for the whole fund. Get back on the right page.
Sure, Mayor, City Council. So the 3rd Street utility rehabilitation, we completed phase 1 of that project last summer, putting in all the valves along 3rd Street. As you may recall, we bid out the next phase of the project and brought that to you with a recommendation to reject the one bid that we did get. It came in way over budget. Our plan is, at this point, we're rescoping that project a little bit, really prioritizing the areas along 3rd Street that need to be completed first, and are hoping to get that next phase out to bid this fall so that we can start construction of that early next spring. Again, the driver for this project is YDOT coming in 2025 to redo 3rd Street. And so we are going to be working hard to get all the water line that needs to be replaced along 3rd Street done before they get in there to redo the street and curb and gutter and things like that.
Yeah, this one is a race against the clock, but it will be very cost effective in the long run to get this underground work done in advance of YDOT making that street much different and improved on the surface.
Yeah, we don't want to be trying to do those things after that for as long as we can get away with it, for all the obvious reasons. Money, and that 3rd Street's such a main drag through the community that anytime you're doing anything there, it's disruptive. So yeah, good. Hope it all works out.
Yeah, the rising prices is definitely concerning right now, but all we can do is try to ride it out and try to stay on schedule. So, yeah. I found the total. I apologize for losing my place in the document, but in this transmission section, you'll see that we are rebudgeting $22.66 million from current to next fiscal year. And then you won't be surprised to hear we're only recommending adding an additional $3 million new money in the new fiscal year. And the reason for that, of course, is the volume of work is enormous enough that we just need to get through that. And most of these projects were planned to occur over multiple construction seasons and over multiple fiscal years. So we're on track with that. Brooks, I'll let you talk a little bit about the citywide utility survey project. We're really putting the majority of the funding into this project in the upcoming fiscal year, $300,000, and we have $370,000 invested total. We'll be rebudgeting the remainder of the $70,000.
Sure. So we started this project last year. We had a company come in and GIS or map out the water and wastewater system. And so these funds now are to bring the company back to basically map out the curb stops and meter pits all over town. This helps our utility crews while they're out in the field working to be able to quickly identify those, so they're not driving all over town looking for stuff, right? They can pull up their map and it will show them exactly where that meter pit, that curb stop, that water line, that water valve, whatever, it'll show them exactly where it is. And so really makes their job more efficient and quicker to get repairs and things like that done. So this is to finish up that project, getting the water utility mapped out for our crews.
Council, I'll tell you, I'm pleased to see this project in this section of city operations, and the reason is technology continues to be an initiative that we pursue so that we can be more efficient, and I think that this project is really going to enable our utility folks to work smarter, not harder, and that's really important to ongoing, to keeping over time the ongoing increase in cost as low as possible for our residents. So pleased with this project. 19th Street and Bill Nye. Brooks, you want to talk through that? We're going to get going in earnest on this project in the upcoming year, and then also the Wyoming Avenue water line, which we did just discuss a little bit as it relates to the SPT street work.
Yeah, so the 19th Street, Bill Nye, person prior to replacement, it's interwoven with the B2 line and the future Bill Nye coming in. And you'll see this project also over on the sewer side when we get there. Basically to get that water and sewer in place in that area, and then replace old deteriorating line. Really, you'll see a lot of these water and sewer projects that we've got in here that are planning in the future for that Bill Nye coming through. We need to get those utilities in place before that street comes through, obviously. And so this is one of those projects over on 19th. And then as you saw on the SPT, we had the funds in there for the paving portion of this project.
Brooks.
Oh, go ahead, Mayor. Sorry.
Yeah, just quickly, that's right out my back door here, and so I just want to ask a question about that, which is that the soil in parts of that area, it's a lot of that gypsum stuff that's hard to build on, work with. And does that make those projects a little pricier because of soil amendments or different things you guys have to do to prevent, heaving and other problems with paving? I may let the city or city engineer talk to that a little bit, but yeah, I mean, as far as the paving, we're not going to be able to go in and do a mill and overlay. It's a full reconstruction, right? So we've got to
we've got to go down and redo the base in there and sometimes geofabric. So yeah, those 3 projects become more expensive, for sure. And then, as far as the line replacement, some of these are old ductile iron and that soil's just eating them up. And so, replacing these with PVC pipe will help that into the future.
Yeah, I think some of that water up there, and I know it's perfectly safe and everything, but I think the lines up there, it makes it a little siltier, maybe, and that'd be great to see that as an improvement. And I don't need an expanded answer on that. That was good enough for me. I just know that gypsum soil is problematic for infrastructure, so it's good to hear about some upgrades and changes here in the old neighborhood. All right, sorry about that. Go ahead, City Manager.
No, that's great. Eric, did you want to add anything?
No, I think Brooks kind of hit it that, as you deal with the groundwater, so that's more expensive as you're kind of working through that, and also fabric, thicker cross section for the road, everything along those lines. So Brooks covered it well.
Great, thank you. So moving along, our next project that we've been planning for and will start in earnest in the upcoming year is Gerald Place water line replacement. I think Gerald Place might be the shortest street in all of the city of Laramie. It's like 1.5 blocks long or something. Anyway, Brooks, you want to touch on that? Right? It's just standard water line replacement, yeah?
Let's get some money in the budget to rename that Klaus Hansen Boulevard if we can.
There you go. I like that.
I'll tell you, Gerald Place has actually become our #1 priority sewer project. The sewer line out there's all but failed at this point, and so we actually expedited this project. If you remember, council amended the budget to allow us to move forward with design, and as we're doing the sewer, we evaluated the water, and so this is the water part of that project. As we move into the wastewater side, you'll see the sewer side of it, but this is to replace the water while we're in there.
How old is that system there?
I don't know. I don't know if any of the engineers know, or I know Cal and Paul from the utility division are both on. I'm not sure the age. I do know we're at 90% design on the project, and our plan is to get the Gerald Street done this summer.
Good enough for me. It's old enough that it needs the full overhaul. So there you go. Janine, we can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Boy, one of these meetings, I'm gonna never forget to push the mute button. One of these meetings.
You and me both.
Yeah. So that's all of the new projects in the transmission section. As we move, now we're on page 95. We have one newly funded project in the treatment plant section. That's asphalt for the roads out at the water treatment plant. This is something that we have talked about over the years, and it just is, we need to do this so that our equipment and our vehicles and our employees can get from the highway to the plant and move around out there. Brooks, if there's anything notable you want to add, please do, but I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Right now, as you know, none of that surface is really paved, and it's pretty rough out there. So
I'll just add, if I could, Janine, that we have a lot of public that uses that driveway there too to come in and fill up with water. We have a water fill station in that area, and it tends to get pretty muddy and nasty in there, and so the asphalt surface will help a bunch for that also.
Thanks, Brooks. I appreciate that. Then as you move down to the bottom of page 95, Council, we're in our water rights and protection section. Most of these projects you're very, very familiar with already. We are under cap well drilling. We are carrying money forward from the current budget into next fiscal year and adding a bit of funding to complete the project. And the detail of this is on sorry, let me get to the right page. The detail of this is on page 127, or excuse me, on 126, if you want to look at it in more detail. Then as you move down that list there, you'll see the consumptive use plan update. We have seeded money in the budget starting July 1st to update our consumptive use plan at the Monolith Ranch. Excuse me, this is a needed update. It's been many years since we did that. And the consumptive use plan allows us to preserve basically our Dallin water right on the ranch and to document that use for future transfer to municipal use many decades into the future. We also have a hazmat spill emergency response plan budgeted for $25,000. I believe that we hope that this is a project that we can partner with Albany County on, and also with, of course, WYDOT. This ties to the potential for a hazmat spill that could compromise the aquifer along Telephone Canyon. Again, another project we've talked about for a very long time. Then we have the rehabilitation at the Pioneer Pasture. You approved this project last year. Darren has started this project, just very early stages. The completed amount of funding is added in fiscal 21-22 of $25,000, and that, of course, was a planned expenditure, but we will round out the budget with this second year of the biennium. You also are familiar with the headgate structure out at the Dallin ditch there, $50,000. This is tied to the project that you recently approved the grant for, where we'll try to look at that headgate structure in a different way to preserve habitat as well as accomplish the water management needs that we have. And then lastly, $20,000 recommended for water rights petitions. This is a placeholder in the budget largely in the event that we need to deal with the Goforth Reservoir or something should come up there. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take those. Again, the descriptions are for all of the water rights and protection projects, page 126 to page 131.
Any questions on water protection or water rights? Okay.
Okay. Then we're ready to move to our wastewater fund. That starts on page 133. You will note as we move through this, I looked at it before the meeting council, many of these projects are also well known to you. We had a pretty aggressive undertaking last fiscal year, and many of these projects are carrying across into the next fiscal year as we expected. So starting in the collection section, we're carrying forward $6.4 million in rebudgeted projects. We're adding or recommending the addition of $3.5 million in new money to complete projects in their secondary phases, or in some cases for new projects. The first of the projects we're recommending additional funds for completion are the B2 line replacement, and I know we've talked about this a lot. We're recommending $2 million, and of course that was known that we would recommend that last year. What you approved last year was simply design money, and the $2 million would be construction funds. I will talk, Reynolds Sanitary Sewer is a similar situation, $1 million being recommended in fiscal 22, and then $2 million in fiscal 23 to complete all of the phases of this sanitary sewer line replacement. So far, expenditures have been about $2.5 million, and in total, this project will cost $5.5 million. So, Brooks, on those two projects, anything you'd like to add?
Janine, I'd just add that the on the Reynolds sewer project, council will see next week on their agenda bid award for the first phase construction on that project.
Oh, that's great. And we're within budget.
Yes, ma'am.
That's great news. Moving down that list, Council, we talked about Gerald Place. You see here $250,000 recommended for the sewer portion of the Gerald Place project. And then right below that, there is a priority When we say priority sewer rehabilitation, that means it's a priority because the line is deteriorated. I think you all know that, but I should clarify. So we do have a priority line rehabilitation plan for $250,000 in the alley between 1300 and 1400 blocks of what street? Doesn't say. Brooks, do you remember off the top of your head the street name?
On the 13th, 14th alley?
Oh, yeah.
Between, it's between Flint and Gibbon.
Flint, thank you. Okay. Then as we look at the treatment plant council, and then I'm at the bottom of page 133, you do have a wastewater treatment plant upgrade project design, a little bit of money to round out the completion of that project, with $637,061 being rebudgeted and $132,500 new in the upcoming fiscal year to finish the project. Brooks, you want to give a quick update on where we're at with this sort of ongoing project?
Sure. We're in design of the project. We're moving right along. You'll see down below the $9.5 million. If you recall, that's SRF fund. It's an SRF funded project. The water fund, or I'm sorry, the wastewater fund is paying for the design portion, and then the 9.5 for the construction is SRF funding. So anyway, we're in the middle of design right now, and hopefully get that project moving forward this winter.
Thanks, Brooks. Really, the wastewater treatment plant upgrade construction that Brooks just mentioned is the bulk of all of the projects planned for the treatment plant, which total $11.26 million. And then, Council, you'll see on page 134 the grant revenue, and I shouldn't say grant because SRF is technically a loan program, but the state revolving fund loan program revenue is reflected for you in the middle box on page 134. We were able to secure clean water SRF green funding, which has a 0% interest for $1.9 million, so that was great news. And then the remaining portion of the project, $7.6 million in state revolving fund clean water monies, and that has a 2.5% interest rate on it.
Anything on that, council members? Okay.
Okay, so that's your wastewater system. It's pretty straightforward with just a couple really large notable projects underway. The last item on our agenda for this evening is to move to the solid waste fund, and that's on page 157. And I know we have staff here with us from solid waste. So I'll look to you guys to jump in anywhere you would like to. In particular, Brooks, JR, anybody else? Starting on the top of page 157, we do have one piece of equipment that will be replaced this year. Let me find that. Let's see. Oh, automated truck. Actually, a couple of automated trucks. I misspoke. I was looking at vehicles. So in total, we have... I'm at the bottom of the page, by the way, in equipment. We have $4 million planned over 4 years with 3 pieces of large equipment being replaced in the upcoming fiscal year. Those are in the middle of the box, unit numbers 678, then a new water truck, and then unit 602. 678 is one of our automated trucks that's slated for replacement this year. The new water truck, I'll let JR and Brooks discuss a little bit what that is for. And then Unit 602 being the landfill track loader, if you guys want to talk about that at all. These are pretty large dollar items, but certainly needed and in our replacement schedule.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor, City Council, the water truck's a new piece of equipment to the fleet, to the landfill, primarily used for dust control. One of the which is one of the items that we're regulated on, is our dust at the landfill. So to help with dust control, and then also fire suppression out at the landfill, but primarily for dust. And then the landfill track loader, we're looking at replacing that with a small dozer, which is basically what it is. We're looking at there's some technology out there that it's an electric drive bulldozer, basically. 30% fuel reduction savings on those, and they've been proven out. They've been using them for years now. We looked at it when we looked at it back in 2014 when we bought this piece of equipment, but it was brand new technology, and we were a little nervous about it. But it looks like it's been proven out, and so when we bid this piece of equipment out, the landfill track loader, we'll be bidding an alternate for the electric drive on that. See what those costs come in, and hopefully realize a pretty good fuel savings there and carbon emission reduction.
Thanks, Brooks. I would just add our carbon reducing add-ons over 4 years are 77,000 we estimate. Of course, we'll know more as we move forward with the bids and whatnot, but a very small portion of that in this year.
That's good news. It's great to see some of that policy, being put into place with equipment purchases. On those collection trucks, the automated trucks for collection, how many of those do we have in the solid waste department?
We've got JR on the phone. He probably knows better, but I think it's 7 or 8, and we've got them on a 7 or 8 year replacement. That's why you see one every year, because we're basically replacing the oldest one every year. So,
yeah, when they just kind of stagger that way naturally, that makes sense. JR, I don't know if you want to jump in, but you sure can if there's something you want to add. You don't have to. I see you're here on the call. Anything you want to?
Honorable Mayor, we've got about 7 of the automated trucks, and we have to think that when those go around town, they're servicing several hundred houses every day, and so that arm is constantly going up and down, a lot of starts and stops. So it's hard on those trucks. The refuse is pretty hard on them.
Yeah, I imagine so, and it sounds like you guys have it on a replacement schedule that makes sense, and some of that's just going to be driven by necessity. The oldest one's going to be the most worn out, and so it needs to be replaced the soonest, and then next year we'll just go down the line, right? So that makes sense.
Mayor, we used to have these on a 12-year replacement schedule, and so what we found out was those last few years we were putting so much money into maintenance and replacement of parts on them that it just fiscally it didn't pan out.
Yep, that makes sense. It'd be better to just change it up and get a new one. Are those trucks, the manufacturers of that equipment, are they getting into the electric or hybrid vehicle game?
Yeah, Mayor, we've been trying to follow it. The biggest problem we're having, they're trying. The biggest problem we're having is because of all the moving parts on the truck, they pull a lot of power. And so you only get 3 to 4 hours on a full charge on the truck. And so when we're trying to run a route that's 8 hours long, we can't make it through the day, right? There's a lot of pilot projects going on with them, mostly in big cities, Seattle, New York. You'll see they're doing a lot of electric truck pilot projects, but they're getting 10 of them in. So the guy runs it for 3 hours, comes in, grabs another one, and goes out. We obviously can't afford to do that. So, but the technology's coming, and I think here in the next few years we're going to be there.
Couple things I'd like to say.
Yeah, please go ahead, Councilor.
First one was on the track loader. Is it Caterpillar, their D7E track loader? Because they've been working with that technology, just like Brooke said, on that. So I'm just curious on the brand.
It's the one we've been looking at that we've been researching is it's it's the same technology as the D7E, but it's actually a D6. It's a little bit smaller machine. D7's a little bit bigger than what we need. So it's a D6, but it's the same exact technology.
Then I was wondering on the trash collection trucks, we have at our school and are now teaching kids on compressed natural gas, which would be able to run a longer run time. And natural gas has no carbon in it, so you completely get rid of the black smoke and everything like that, and much cleaner fuel. Have we looked into compressed natural gas garbage trucks?
Yeah, Honorable Mayor, City Council, we have done a little bit of looking. One of the main problems is, one, we don't have a compressed natural gas fueling station in Laramie. We could put one in, very expensive. The other issue we have, and you probably know with Wyotech, with the compressed natural gas vehicles, you've got to have specialized garages to park those in. Again, another huge expense we don't have right now. I think maybe a good alternative for the future, but it's going to take a lot of capital to put into that. Compressed natural gas trash trucks are very popular across the country, especially in big cities, very dense areas. But right now, I mean, it's a huge capital investment to get there. One for the fueling station, and then the maintenance facilities for those vehicles.
Thank you, Councilor Schuster. Good questions. And, Mr. Webb, JR, we're not trying to pick on the solid waste department. We just know it's a big fleet. It does a lot of important work. And, we know you guys are looking for options for us with the carbon reduction technology. Just keep us updated. This is one of the few times we get everybody here to ask all those questions too. So we appreciate it. And we know you guys will, you folks out there, let us know when things are coming down the line, and you're making some strides in that direction with some heavy equipment. So appreciate the background and the additional information. Anybody else want to?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, please. Yeah, go for it.
I was wondering how many trucks are out, and are they out every day? The collection trucks.
Council,
I think seven. I know there are 7. Are they all out every day? Do we collect trash? Does the city collect trash Monday through Friday, and then are all 7 trucks used every single day? I was just curious.
Yeah, Councilor Doherty, we do collect trash Monday through Friday. We were in 2 trash routes every day, a recycling route every day. And then we have auxiliary trucks that go out for missed pickups and specialized areas. Sometimes we do some different stuff downtown depending on if events are going on. But no, not all trucks are running every day. There's usually at least one broke down, and there's one that's got to be in for normal maintenance, and so we rotate through those. We do have spare trucks, which we've got to have. I mean, if we didn't have those spare trucks and something broke, we wouldn't be picking up trash.
And also, thank you, Councilor Doherty. It occurs to me that we probably put some of that stuff into use when we have some kind of a big spring storm event like we did the other week there, and we're going and picking up branches and all kinds of other stuff too that we need that extra capacity for. Good question, Councilor Doherty. Anybody else on this one? I'm not even seeing cameras on here. I think people are just listening.
Mayor, just a quick question for Brooks, if I could.
Yeah.
Just a general question, Brooks. Everybody's interested in recycling. Is there anything from the city standpoint new in recycling that you're possibly looking at that might fit Laramie?
Councilor Gabriel, we're praying that the market values go back up at this point. That as you know, the recycling commodity values have really dropped over the past few years. It seems like they've leveled out at this point at a low rate, at a low market value, but at least they're not still dropping. And we're really hoping those start to come back up. It would really help the program out. I know some of the councilors wanted to talk about the possibility of future recycling collection areas within the city limits, and and that's something that I've looked at multiple times since I've been here. We have a pretty good recycling drop-off set up at the landfill. We take everything there at the landfill. We've improved that area with the paving there. To put another recycling collection area in town is it's tough, and the reason is because I would never recommend an unmanned recycling center. We've seen you see it across the country. Unmanned recycling centers just turn into trash heaps. Motor oil gets dropped, hazardous materials, things like that. And so to have a manned site, of course, is costly. You've got to pay a person to be there. You've got to fence it off. We would need more containers. We'd need another truck. I spoke with the folks down at the city of Loveland. They actually have a really good recycling center down there set up on 16 acres. But I'll tell you what, they charge each household $11.25 a month for recycling. That includes a single stream pickup at their house, and then they can use that recycling drop-off facility. That's almost 3 times what we charge our residents. And then if the residents come to that facility and they don't have a utility bill, so if they're outside of their service area, then they pay an additional fee. So if we have a drop-off center, they cost money, and so the question is who pays for them? And right now everything's paid through our user fees. And so if you have folks that want to come in and use that facility that aren't part of that aren't already paying a user fee, you've got to have a way to charge them, which again means a person there. So it's a costly proposition. And I'll tell you this morning I Googled how long it takes to get to the landfill from the farthest reaches of the city borders. And at 9:30 this morning, you could drive from anywhere in the city limits to the landfill in 12 minutes. And at the landfill, we have drop-off for all recycling items, including our green waste, our household hazardous waste, our electronic waste. Everything is there. It's controlled, it's secured. We can make sure that the materials coming in aren't contaminated. We can make sure that hazardous materials aren't illegally dropped. And so, I mean, we've looked at alternatives. We've looked at other drop-off locations. Looking at the cost of that, it's a huge pass along to the users. And so we, at this point, without direction from council, we haven't brought that forward.
I think we've got an upcoming work session about that slated. I don't think it's scheduled. I just think it's on the list. We might be able to dig in a little deeper there. Just off the top of my head, as I'm listening to those concerns, they sound pretty important. But I do wonder if if we can keep that conversation alive. I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of automated monitoring that we might take a look at. It does strike me that there's a lot of potential customers for that aren't able to be in the system right now, but just because we have so many types of residences here that can opt out of that recycling. So it's just something I think there's an interest in keeping alive, but I understand it might be challenging, but hopefully there's an interest from the community, and I know there's an interest from the council to continue that discussion, maybe get a little more detailed look at how we might be creative about it. And I saw that Councilor O'Doherty had a question. I hope this is an appropriate time to talk about a little bit of this. I don't know if it is, but it seems like it is. Go ahead, Councilor O'Doherty.
I'm going to be one pestering for that because I think source separation, if we have the segregated cardboard, some spots in town, people buy so much stuff with boxes and Amazon and all that. If people that lived in apartments would have a place to put cardboard right in town, it would pay for itself because cardboard is valuable. Separated cardboard rather than having it all go into one mix and then then they charge us for contamination. So I'd really like to do more research, and I know I'm like a broken record, which is a thing that we used to have. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Jordy, I think Mr. Webb said he wasn't putting the kibosh on it. He just wanted a firmer direction from council. And like I said, I know we have a work session scheduled for that. The thing that gets me about this issue before we move on is just we have so many. We know from our housing studies and things of that nature, we've got an awful lot of people renting. And some of those rentals, the folks go ahead and participate in the recycling program. But, for a lot of the multi-unit structures and things like that, they can get a container and they either go through the city or they go through somebody private, and they essentially opt out of the program or are able to opt out of participating in the recycling program. And I wonder if that volume might be something that could help us in terms of cost there, but we'll talk about it more later, huh? Okay. Thanks for the little
Mayor, it was
sidebar
interesting.
there.
Last Saturday, took some glass out to the Conservation Corps at Walmart. They take the glass down to Loveland, and it was just amazing to see the barrels full of glass coming to that Conservation Corps center there. And, they take it all down to Loveland, but they do that a couple times a year, and that's really a valuable source.
We do have the glass bunker in this budget, though, I see, right?
I'm not seeing it on the page we're looking at now, but maybe it'll be something. And I don't want to derail us too much, but I think this has been good conversation. I know Brooks Webb knows that this is something that the community and the council has an interest in. So let's just keep it alive, stay creative, think about how volume that, like Councilor Gabriel is just referencing, how some of those things might come into play with this. And we'll start looking at more policy around it and what those choices might be. And again, I'm not trying to shut anybody down here. I think it's an appropriate thing to raise, but I know we've got a few other items here in the budget that we need to get to. So we'll have an informed discussion about it at that work session. Anybody else want to tag in here with the solid waste conversation before we move it along? Council members, everybody's okay for now? All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Council. So we are on the last page for our review this evening, and we're only 13 minutes over the time I hope to hit, so that's good news. I'm looking at our capital construction projects in the solid waste fund at the top of that page. You'll see the majority of these projects are budgeted currently and just being carried forward, and maybe additional money added to complete them in the second year of the biennium and the second construction season. The household hazardous waste building, I know you're familiar with that project. We're going to carry forward $847,632 and add $350,000 to it for a total project cost of $1.22 million. We also, as you mentioned, do have the bunker and loading dock for glass being rebudgeted, as well as the Baylor building loading dock for $100,000. Brooks, since this came up just previously, you want to just refresh everybody's memory about the glass and then the Baylor building dock project that were approved last year, and that I think we're going to complete this year.
Yeah. Both projects should be completed this summer. The Baylor building loading dock, JR's just getting under design, and that's the loading dock out the back door that we load. We take the single stream materials out, the bales, and load them into the truck. And we need to upgrade that loading dock to make it safe for employees to go there. And then the bunker and loading dock for the glass should be a pretty quick project to get in place. Right now, what we're seeing with the market values on glass, there shouldn't really be much cost to the program, and that the rebate we get back for the glass should be able to pay for the trucking at this point. that trucking market changes, fuel prices going up, that may change a little bit. But right now, as it stands today, it looks like at least a break-even program.
It's great. It's great to see some progress on that, and a little bit of a revival of a glass program. That's really cool. And that's even better news to hear that it might end up being close to cost neutral. So that's good. I think we'll see people wanting to utilize that.
That would be really great. Council, the only really new project in the Solid Waste Fund is the expansion of our indoor meeting and storage space out there. I'm recommending $75,000 this year for design, $200,000 in the following year for construction, for a total cost of $275,000. Brooks can give you more detail, but I know many of you have been out to our facility. We have, I think, 240 square feet of space that is heated, all the remaining space unheated. And so when we store people and when we store equipment, heated space is sort of at a premium out there, and we'd like to expand that a little bit so that we can be more efficient with training and other functions. Brooks, JR, do you want to add anything to that?
No, Janine, I think you hit it. I mean, we've got 10 staff members out at the landfill roughly, and that 240 square feet is their locker room, it's their break room, it's their meeting room, it's their training room, it's where they store sensitive equipment like survey equipment. So it gets really small really fast. And when we originally did the project almost 10 years ago now and built that building, we really wanted a larger space there. We knew it was needed. The funding just wasn't available at the time. So really, I mean, that's it, is just getting a space where staff can really function and we can have training. We get a lot of field trips out there also. And there's nowhere to get the folks inside out of the cold if they're out there on a cold day or whatever. So anyway, just to expand that, trying to expand that space for staff and the public.
Don't you guys get some occasional freeloading raccoons, skunks, or other critters out there? I remember seeing something about that. We'd want to keep them nice and toasty and with plenty of room too. So got to get that in place.
That has occurred, yes.
Yeah.
Council, that concludes the capital budget for all funds. It looks like Councilor Schuster maybe has a question.
I just wanted to comment. He was talking about the heated space, and I know that you're looking at a water truck that is electrically powered because, again, it wouldn't have to travel too far away from home. And batteries are optimal at work energy at about 67 to 70 degrees. So having a battery warmed up in the morning will make that vehicle work a lot more efficient, plus not freezing the water inside the tank too. So thank you.
If I could, real quick to that, the household hazardous waste building that's being designed actually has a garage bay for the water truck because there's no heated garages out at the landfill. So through the design of that household hazardous waste building, there is one side of it is basically a garage specifically for that water truck to stay heated.
All right. Good. Well, city manager, should we just check and see if there's any wrap-up discussion or questions? It's a lot of material, but I think you guys covered it all pretty well for us. And a couple of things we're going to talk about in a little more detail later, I think we identified, and that's okay. I appreciate how you've outlined some of the cost-saving strategies for the next year and the year after that even. And obviously we know in Laramie we have to do all of that we can. We look forward to maybe that mid-year meeting about some other funds that might be available for some of these capital construction projects, maybe from some federal sources. So, we'll be looking forward to how that plays out and those discussions. Council, any other final questions on anything here in this last part of capital? I don't see a lot of hands popping up, so I'll turn it back over to you, City Manager.
I think I'm completed. I would just ask Malia maybe to remind everybody of the deadline for submitting any revisions to budget in amendment form.
Yeah, that'd be great. I don't remember the date.
I believe it was at the end of this week, and we were going to do the special meeting on the next council meeting. So our special on our next capital meeting, we were going May, whatever, on the May 7th, we had a special meeting. So if you guys need any, if you don't have any changes, that's great. But if you have changes, please get a hold of. And it's in the email that we sent you. And I was going to look it up, Janine. I forgot to look it up, but we did send you all an email reminding you of the dates and everything. So if you want to go look at that, or I can resend it tomorrow. But basically, if you have any changes to capital, please let us know and get the amendments in. A lot of times when you have changes to capital, we have to look at maybe options of how to fund it.
Malia, if I could just respectfully request that you just send it out again with the volume of email that comes in. It's always nice to have it closer to the top.
I'll send it out in the morning.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Council or staff, are we feeling like there's going to be a need for a meeting tomorrow? A lot of head shaking. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I think that email may have come from Jen Wade, if I remember correctly.
It did.
If anybody's looking for it.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, you can always just use your, I don't need to tell anybody that you can just use your search feature in there. Sometimes it's nice to just have it pop up at the top. I didn't see anybody thinking that we needed to meet tomorrow, but I saw the city manager was going to say something to us. Go ahead.
Mayor, I was just going to say, from our standpoint, we've covered all of the material and recommendations, so we are comfortable with not meeting tomorrow if the council are.
Yeah, I don't see anybody expressing a need for that one, so that'd be nice. We won't have a meeting tomorrow. We can move on then with our order of business here for the work session, and we have another item that we wanted to dig into, and where I think we have enough time, depending on how long we want to talk about this, and that's the council rules of procedure and code of conduct. So let's close our work session on the capital budget. And council, do you want to move forward with the rules and procedures discussion now? All right. Well, let's open it up then and go ahead. I don't see anybody from staff that this is turned over to. It's council, so I'll kick it off. And what I think I'd like to do is just you go to the usual round robin, hands up if you have something here. I know that there's been a couple of points of discussion and some potential changes that people would like to make. And we've got the city manager and other members of staff here, the city attorney. So let's hear it. Vice Mayor, please get us started.
Okay, I've got a couple things I'd like to get started with. I've got a list that's, I wouldn't call it long, but it's pretty detailed, maybe. One of the things I want to consider, or to have us consider, is cleaning up the language related to telecounseling or telecommunications. I forget what it's called.
Sure.
And kind of move that into better language, such as like web conferencing. So just cleaning up every time, the telephone is mentioned, and getting current with web conferencing technologies and stuff like that. So that was kind of the first thing.
Vice Mayor, is your suggestion there just to see if we can kind of get a good catch-all terminology into the rules and procedures, so that when we're referencing whether you're calling in by phone or using Zoom or whatever, it falls under that umbrella? Yeah. Right. And I don't know, that maybe there's some correct term that we need to use. Have you been able to find anything about that?
Well, web conferencing would be the correct term. I mean, we're all provided a laptop, and I'm assuming, although maybe city staff will have to check me out here, but I'm assuming we'll keep some Zoom technologies available for folks that might be out of town or perhaps home for a particular reason, or when we get back to face, who simply can't make it in a face-to-face platform, so that we could just Zoom them into a meeting as opposed to having them call in. And the reason I would avoid the word Zoom is because it's a vendor. It's a product.
Right.
Whereas what we're doing is basically web conferencing.
Right.
So I think just using that word, and like I said, just cleaning up all the dated information. And I don't think we need to go page by page. I don't think I need to go through all that because it's really spread throughout the entire document. So I think just, maybe having that cleaned up would be a good first step.
I agree. Okay.
So there's that issue. And then for those that have been around for a while, and I don't have the page number up, but we have a limit of $100,000 on our consent agenda. And I think we've had that limit, probably when Councilor Hansen was mayor. We're talking not 2 decades, but 15 or so years ago. And I really think we might want to consider raising that limit to potentially $250,000 for consent agenda items. It's a thought. I think in the past that has been met with a little hesitation, but I think, if we just went through our budget and you realize that these trucks are almost $500,000, and we've approved the budget, and they're on a replacement plan, and we should be pretty confident in knowing that some of these items have a pretty hefty price. Like I said, we've already approved them, and I think we should be able to move some things through, just a little bit quicker. And I think raising that price to $250,000 from $100,000 will help us do that in the speed of our meetings. So anyway, that's one of the thoughts I've had.
And that's on page 6 at the bottom of the page, and it's item B, consent agenda, and it's items 3 and 4.
Thank you. I should have my agenda up here, or my rules of procedure up. The other thing I want to talk about is the possibility of removing public comments on non-agenda items for our regular meetings on the first and third Tuesdays, and adding a public comment time between, if we have 2 work sessions on one night, and having the work session agenda such that we start out with non-agenda items like we do on the work session. We go to our work session, we have comments on the work session, and then we go to our next work session item and have comments on that work session after the work session, and then we can still have non-agenda comments towards the end if we want, but it's been a little clunky from my perspective. I mean, sometimes we do it, sometimes we don't. And I feel like getting it in writing and adding a public comment period between the work sessions would be good. And or maybe just right after each one, because what I don't think it's fair to the public to have to wait until after we do our agenda review and our council updates or comments on the work session. It's okay to wait till the end for non-agenda items, but I'm having a difficulty having them wait for a work session that we just finished up. So, Councilor Harrington?
Yeah, Vice Mayor, are you saying just move the final public comment period to just the closing of the work sessions prior to comments by council?
Say that one more time.
I'm trying to understand what you're saying with this public comment change, and I'm wondering if what you are saying is to move the second public comment period during a work session evening, that final item on our agenda, moving that to instead of being at the very end, to be before council comment. So the final work session would close. We would have our non-agenda public comment. The public presumably would leave at that point unless they really wanted to stick it out, and then we would have comments and an agenda review. Is that what you're saying?
I believe I am. Yes.
Okay.
But also, she was saying between the work sessions. So if somebody wanted to, the public wanted to comment about our first item today, they have to wait until the second item, we pretty much close down, and then to talk about something that is relevant to the last 5 minutes, like something that we are just on the topic of. So we don't really have agenda public comment during these work sessions, do we?
Right. We don't really have a formal process that facilitates comments on the work session topics as we go through them.
So if everybody has their agenda up for tonight, okay. So my proposal would be after the work session on the capital budget, we would add a public comment period regarding the capital budget. Okay. And after our work session right now on rules of procedure, we would add a public comment period after the work session on the rules of procedure. And if we wanted, we could still keep the very last public comment and just put that as non-agenda items. Does that make sense? But what is problematic to me is we start out with non-agenda items, which is fine. We go through 2 work sessions. We then have to go through our updates. We do an agenda review, and then finally we get to hear from the public on any topic at the very end. And I'd just like to interject a public comment period basically at the end of each work session on the work session topic. So what I'm trying to do is exchange the public comment period at the beginning of the meeting on non-agenda items on our regular meeting, our first and third Tuesday, and basically take that time and move it to our work session. If that makes sense.
Makes sense in terms of your explanation.
I mean, frankly, we've been very busy till really late in the evening, and I feel like doing a switch, still keeping comments, available. I'd like to move that.
Yep, that makes sense.
For the work session night. I'd also want us to seriously think about finishing our meetings 30 minutes earlier on evenings that we have executive session. So something we could do very easily is if you go to the page where it says when our meetings end, you know, the 9:30 and 10, if we just change that to 9 and 9:30 when we have executive sessions, I think that's something else we need to consider because, you know, with the meetings getting over at 10 o'clock, by the time we take a break, you know, we're basically starting executive sessions roughly at 10:15 and sometimes going, you know, sometimes they're long, sometimes they're short, but I'd like to, on the nights that we have executive session, to try to get done just a little bit earlier. So that's basically what I've been thinking about. I'm certainly open to, you know, other thoughts. I know Councilor Somerville has some ideas as well.
Let's hold on a second and let's get feedback from everybody on those proposals, if there is any, and then we'll deal with we'll go on to other council members' additional proposals. So thoughts about the vice mayor's changes? Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
I'll go to you next, Councilor Gabriel.
I would say, you know, I'm not opposed to those public comment changes. I'm not sure that it's necessary to add to the work session as an item on our agenda, but I am wondering if our practice could just be to go to the public for public comment at the end of a work session. And I do feel like we are still providing public comment at every meeting, whether it's at the beginning or the end. So I'm really pretty okay with that. Our meetings have been running awfully long, so it's not a terrible idea to see if we can find some solutions to that. And then I would say on that last piece of capping our meetings earlier, you know, I think the more simple way to do that is for council to quit voting to extend our meetings at the end of a meeting if we have executive session. To me, it seems like it's already built in. We just have to maybe collectively decide we want to punish ourselves a little less, and frankly punish members of the public who have to wait till 10 to comment.
And our staff.
And staff, yeah, certainly, Aaron. Councilor Doherty, you're right. So, you know, I don't know, maybe that does require a change. My sense, though, is that if we changed it, the same council members that vote to extend it from 9:30 to 10 are going to vote to extend it from 9 to 9:30 or 9 to 10 still. And I mean, maybe it's a culture change that we need to have rather than a code of conduct change. That's my 2 cents. I'm not sure.
Other thoughts? Councilor Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree that comments after each work session topic is appropriate. I guess I never thought that we didn't have that, but that's the case.
I think it's been kind of informal. I think it's
just makes a lot of sense that we have a work.
Yeah. I don't
so anyway,
think. Please go ahead. No, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
So what Councilor Harrington said, I agree with that. Each work session topic should be available for public comment. Move on to the next one, public comment. Extending the regular meeting is certainly something that we need to discuss, but it seems to me we meet, generally speaking, one time a week, and that Tuesday is the night that we meet, and sometimes it goes long and sometimes it doesn't, so whatever the council decides, I'll go with. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, what I was going to say is, I don't know that we have an official rule about receiving public comment in work sessions. I think the practice has been, you know, let's say we're in the chamber there and we see people that are there for the work session, then we say, oh, is there anybody that would like to make public comment? It might be an okay idea to have something on the agenda after each work session items, just so people know that, yep, if you want to talk to us about the capital budget, then there's the spot for you. I see the city clerk has turned on the camera to join us with some input about that, and help us out with that. Do we have something about public comment on work session topics, or have we just sort of said if there are members of the public that are there, then we'll recognize them to speak?
Mayor, currently in the rules of procedure in 402 under public comments work sessions number 2, it currently states, because work sessions are primarily for council and the public to hear information provided by city staff or other invited presenters, it is in the discretion of the mayor whether to solicit public comments on each agenda item before closing that agenda item. So currently, the way that it's stated, it's up to you as mayor. If you determine that there are members of the public that would like to make comment and you feel it's not appropriate to allow them to make comment, you can just open that at the end of the agenda discussion. I don't personally think that it requires another item on the agenda specifically, but that's up to the council.
Thank you. So I think the question there with this proposal is that we should think about is, do we want to put a official slot on there? I'm totally, I'm ambivalent about it. I could go either way. I think you can make the case either way. I think when we have these remote video meetings, it's nice to have things outlined on the agenda. I think if we were having meetings in person, which we will again someday, it's pretty obvious that we might have members of the public there for a work session, and then we would say, are there members of the public that would like to talk about this work session item? So I can go either way on that. I can see a good reason for adding it, since we're still having some remote meetings, or we may have people that want to continue to join us and comment on things through video conferencing. So I don't really know. I don't think it's a bad idea. I'm just not sure, what direction we should go. I could go either way on that, and I agree with Councilor Gabriel. As far as being the mayor right now for a little while longer, I mean, I think it's nice to let people know when they have that opportunity on paper, since we're not in person. But I think when we are in person, we can all tell when there's somebody there, or they'll raise their hand or something, and we'll let them speak to it.
I like having a space on the agenda in between work sessions for public comment, so that the public knows if they come to this, they'll be able to speak when this topic is addressed.
So that and I think one thing that strengthens that point of view is that otherwise people just aren't sure. And so it's just kind of a nice, like, here you go. This is, if you wanted to show up, then you know that this is a good time to plan on being at the meeting, and then you won't have to be there all night, because after we talk about that, and if you don't care to be there for the rest of the meeting, then you can kind of schedule it for yourself or something like that. I will say this: I'd be willing to bet $5 that we are one of the more vigilant public bodies in terms of creating opportunities for public comment. I think in our community, and I would be willing to venture that probably all over the state of Wyoming, we really go we go as far as we can with creating slots for public comment. So to move a couple around and think about how we might approach that, I don't think is in any way communicating to the public that we don't want to hear public comment, because we make sure that we create plenty of opportunities to do that. So if we put it formally on paper, I think that's okay. We also know that not everybody wants to make public comment at every meeting, and sometimes they don't. So my 2 cents on that one, I think it's an okay idea, and I probably would support it. And for those of you that'll be the mayor the next time around, I don't think it would be a big deal to have it on there. It'd just be a reminder to say, oh, and is there public comment on our work session? Brian, Councilor Harrington.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just consider me convinced. You all made great points. So I could come around to that as well.
Thank you. I don't think it's a real contentious topic. It's just more of a question of how we want to approach it and if we want to put it in the rules or whatever. So I think maybe what we can look forward to is maybe just something where we put a slot in there. I think the city clerk was just sharing that we kind of have something in place on paper, but it's not as defined as what the vice mayor is suggesting. So, I think we're all pretty much okay with it. Council Member O'Doherty.
And I'm just looking back at some recent work sessions, and some of them there's just one, and yet the public still has to wait for us to do our council updates and our whatever. So it'd be nice to move the public comment before we do our council updates. So I like that idea.
City Clerk, you shared a couple of thoughts with us before. I just want to make sure that you don't have a strong position either way on that. To me, it kind of sounds like what we'd be doing is just, instead of saying at the discretion, we just make sure there's a slot there. And if people are there, then they know that's the time to speak to the work session topic. From your seat, does that cause any issues or present any challenges, do you think, in terms of managing our meetings?
Logistically, it's just adding to our template. So we have it preset in there, essentially, is what we'll end up doing. So.
Okay. All right. Vice Mayor, anything else for the suggestions that you had on this work session? Thank you, City Clerk, by the way.
I'm good for a while.
Okay.
I might have some other ideas, but I'm good for now.
I understand.
Get their 2 cents in.
I understand. And I just kind of wanted to go one batch at a time for questions and discussion. Okay, other council members suggested changes to the rules and procedures. Councilmember Somerville.
Thank you, Mayor. So several of mine were similar to the Vice Mayor's on kind of the times in the executive session and kind of streamlining public comment a little bit more. So I like all of that. I think the one that I want to mention, and I'm not quite entirely sure where to put it in this document yet. Still getting some guidance from city staff on that. But I'd like to put some language in there to kind of encourage and make sure that council members are aware they can work with city staff on amendments prior to bringing them. Especially for me personally, I always want to check in on planning amendments and super technical stuff before I bring it on the floor. And I don't know that council members and even new council members when they come on know that they can do that. And so I'd like to add some language to kind of encourage that process.
I appreciate that suggestion, and I think in anticipation of the council considering changes to rules and procedures, we wanted to be pretty careful about this, not because it's a controversial idea, but because the way that we make a rule around that needs to be conscious of staff time and some of the other policies that we have in place. So if we do this, what we want to do is say, okay, if you have amendment ideas and you're not sure about the form, the technical form that those things need to take, you should feel comfortable, and we'd like the staff to feel comfortable being able to help you with that. Not necessarily endorsing any policy or change or spending suggestion or anything like that from the staff side of it, but simply saying, well, here's how you'd word that, and then you can bring that to council so that it's correct as to form. Sort of similar to what we do with the budget amendment form. It's like, okay, here's a little format for you, and here's how you can follow that. There's probably things that council members might want to make amendments for that we can't necessarily have a canned form for. So we'd like to see what that looks like, and I know that's something that we need to get some input from the staff about, so that their concerns are adequately addressed. Council members, any thoughts on this idea? Sort of a procedure for if you want to amend things, so that we're not doing stuff on the fly and having to postpone items, so that we have time to hammer out amendments. We don't always have to do that because we have 3 readings, but again, the the hope here is that we can streamline stuff so that everybody kind of knows the procedure and the staff knows the procedure, so that we can, both have council members, one, feel comfortable doing that and know what to do, and two, have the staff's time also respected and their concerns addressed in that policy. So any kind of suggestions or thoughts about that before I ask the staff to weigh in? Councilmember Somerville, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to also add, kind of for context, we're a little unique given the size of our city, in that we don't have a dedicated staff member for city council. So a lot of other cities similar in our size will have, at least a part-time staff, if not a full-time staff, that is dedicated to kind of the city council. City council members can come to them and ask for research questions, help with amendments and that kind of stuff. We certainly probably don't have the budget for that type of stuff. And I don't want the idea to come across as you would have to use this amendment process. I think it's still a good idea to take amendments on the floor as we need to and kind of be flexible in that process. But again, just want to kind of encourage that resource to be available if council members wanted it, if that makes sense.
It sure makes sense to me. And I think it's pretty clear, to members of the council pretty quickly, after your first couple of months of service, and certainly if you've been here for a couple of years, you can kind of distinguish between those amendments that sort of make sense to be made from the floor, and we have a little discussion about those amendments that come during the meetings, versus those that are a little bit more complicated and that we don't want to be grinding through during the meeting. And so it might be good to have a procedure or a process for it that's in place. And yeah, we don't really have a singular staff member that researches stuff for us. We have lots of them, but they also have lots of other important jobs that they do for the public. So, maybe it warrants a process. Should we go to the staff and see what they think about this? Does anybody else have any other input on this? And we're not expecting miraculous and answers that solve all of these questions right here tonight. But I think it might benefit the council to hear from the city manager and the city attorney on this topic. Whoever wants to weigh in, please do.
Council, no concerns from me. That seems reasonable.
Yeah, but what about as to a good way to approach this? Should we look at other cities and in Wyoming, other city councils, and see what kind of, and if any, processes they have in place?
Yeah, I'm happy to ask around and see if there is anything, but if not, we can try to draft something that would meet your intent as well.
Okay, all right. And with regard to making sure that it doesn't become a time burden too, and I'm not exactly sure what kind of rule we could put in place there. We want council members to have something they can follow. That's a process, the formal process that everybody uses. At the same time, I would, as a member of the council, think it would be a little bit unfair to create a process where I'll pick on Councilmember O'Doherty because she's a good sport about it. Comes with 15 amendments and says, "Great, hey Janine, hey Bob, help me draft these 15 amendments so that they're technically correct." I don't know how we can guard against that, but I think it might be appropriate to have some guardrails there too. So this may require a little bit of homework and thought. Bob, City Attorney Bob, what do you got for us on this? Anything?
No, excuse me. No, I don't think anything new. I would appreciate the guardrails because I like helping. And I just don't. I've never had a problem. I've been able to tell counselors, well, I can't really spend 2 days on that issue, and that comes up once every 2 years. Doesn't come up often.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to work with Janine and see if we can get some language with your guidance that gives you guys some more freedom and some more support.
Go for it.
Couldn't it simply be that council's encouraged to to contact staff with the relevant staff with the idea for the amendment, because with the general contractor thing, I told Clarice and Todd, here are my concerns, and then they tried to come up with language with Bob, I guess, to address those, so that we had it ahead of time. I mean, couldn't it be a simply council's encouraged to address the appropriate staff, for that resolution or whatever, when constructing amendments? It's like would that do it, Andy? I mean, Councilor Somerville?
So, Councilor Doherty, I would say in general, yes, I think that works, but I am cognizant of maybe the sideboards that we may need to be careful with city staff time, and I'd certainly defer to the city manager on that. I mean, in terms, and I would also say in terms of managing that, if, Bob's example comes up more regularly, that I certainly think that's a conversation, as the mayor is the functionary head of the council, and in regular communication with the city manager, if and when that becomes an issue, I would kind of expect them to talk and work it out and kind of, pass it down through council. So
I want to chime in on that before we go back to Janine on it. And it seems to me that that what Councilor O'Doherty suggests is perfectly appropriate, and that's kind of the way we want to handle it. At the same time, those department people, as we all know, they've got plenty to do, and I know they're willing and able and eager to help us if there's an amendment that we want to bring up. Let's say they're suggesting a policy change that needs to work its way through the council process, and then council members have tweaks and changes and amendments. But I think the city manager still has to be, a lot of this still has to be channeled that way in our council manager government, so that she knows that council members are working with staff people, so that she has that opportunity, or the city manager at the time has that opportunity to say, that came up at the meeting. It's going to need some time. You sure can work on it. But there needs to be that intermediary piece there, so it doesn't get out of control. And I just don't know how we put that on those guardrails on paper in a tidy way. I think there's a way to do it, but I would feel better about it having a little bit more development than just council members are encouraged to work with the relevant department people. I don't know how stingy we need to be about that, but I think something needs to be there. And so maybe we can just wait and see what the staff provides us with by way of suggested language, and see if that addresses all the concerns. Guys, looking around the screen here, everybody kind of okay with that? Vice Mayor? I saw the thumbs up. Vice Mayor?
Yep. On that topic, I'm good.
All right. Well, thanks. Okay, other items here as we get towards 8:30. Other suggested changes to the rules and procedures. Vice Mayor.
So I would appreciate if we could potentially add maybe some definitions to some of the motions. And what I mean by that is, when I was reviewing this Robert's Rules book, the blue one that I got years ago, which is, out of date, and I've learned from Nancy, maybe not exactly accurate. There was a motion, and it's called a motion to refer to committee. And I'd really like to maybe think about adding that to our list that's in our rules of procedure, and with a little definition behind it on when it would be appropriate to use that, or even add a few definitions behind all those other types of motions of when is an appropriate time to use them. And also, when we did the substitution on amend by a substitution, I'd really like a little clarity on that as well. So I guess what I'm asking for is just maybe, and I know it's extra for Nancy, but just some sort of little mini definition on some of the motions that we don't often use, and a little bit better, at least from my perspective, maybe using this refer to a committee more often, because I think, I don't know, I just feel like we've had some issues, and Councillor O'Doherty brought up the whole contract thing, and we really beat that to death for a long time. And maybe if we had the refer to committee option, maybe it wouldn't have been so difficult. And maybe if that committee could come back with like a whole substitute, instead of going one by one, that might have been cleaner. I don't know. Maybe I'm just kind of dreaming, but I feel like there's a couple opportunities for us to use different motions at different times to kind of help us come to more of a consensus, maybe. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but
or maybe to do it a little faster instead of having to postpone items or extend items through so many meetings.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a way to do that via Robert's Rules of Procedure, but boy, when I reviewed the out-of-date blue book, I just felt like if there's a way to help us, I want to know, and I want to try it. And it may blow up, I don't know, but like I said, this refer to the committee option or a motion might be good. I mean, I think we might want to try. So, and like I said, and I'm still a little fuzzy on the whole, amend by substitution. I don't exactly know. And I know we got through it, but I'm still a little fuzzy on that and couldn't find it in my little blue book. So now I feel like I need to order, the hardcore, thick, super brown book. Or maybe I have a copy here somewhere, I don't know. But
I have two thoughts about this that occur to me just right now as we're talking about this. One is that if you're on the city council, you really need to have a working understanding of Robert's rules. And the reason is because our code of conduct rules of procedure says that if it's not outlined in city code somewhere, we use Robert's rules to conduct our meetings. So you need to have that good functional understanding of Robert's Rules of Order. The second thing that kind of pops in my mind listening to the Vice Mayor's suggestions, which I agree with, is that we also don't want, Robert's Rules of Order nerds like me digging so deep in there that you're just throwing all kinds of crazy stuff all the time, because we don't do that much with it that often. Outside of the, you move, make a motion, you second, you amend. Occasionally we get into a couple of them that come up pretty rarely, but still often enough that we might want to figure out how to address that. One of those is referral to committee, which is to kind of say, whoa, I don't think anybody on the council is ready for this one just yet. And it seems like that also might help streamline some of this amendment process that we talked about earlier. And I think that's worth doing so that we don't extend topics into 3 and 4 and 5 meetings. Sometimes that's going to happen, but in general, this might help with that, because you're always going to have, I think, council members that are going to have ideas and suggestions that might improve or modify ordinances or things that we're considering. And we might have those in the rules of procedure and then kind of footnoted say, look at Robert's Rules of Order for how to use those appropriately. And I think one of them might be referral to committee, which basically means this is going to need more time, and there's going to be some amendments that people are going to want to craft. And let's just get that handled now so that the next time we talk about this item, we're making progress on it towards the third reading and getting it done and out of the way. The second is, now what was your other Robert's Rules suggestion? The referral to committee, and the other one was, what was it, Vice Mayor? I'm sorry.
Just for me, a little better understanding on the substitution.
Yes.
Amend by substitution. I just like a better, and it's not even in my old dated blue book, and I just like a little help with that one.
I don't think it's because that book's outdated. I think it's because it doesn't come up that much. But I can see where we can get into a thing where we've amended an ordinance or a proposal so much that it's almost like maybe it would be quicker and better and make more sense for council and possibly our staff to just have something in place for amendments by substitution. And maybe we need something in the rules. If I'm tracking this right, maybe we need something in rules and procedures that says, look, this is outlined in Robert's Rules, and here's where you find the information. Would that work? Instead of trying to like copy and paste, pages of Robert's Rules into our code of conduct, we say, look, occasionally a council member may want to do these things. Robert's Rules explains when that's appropriate and how to do it. Two things that just kind of came to me in this conversation.
I mean, I don't think adding like one sentence is going to kill us, since how this is a pretty long document. So.
Yeah, I just don't know. I just don't know that we get it covered in one sentence, right? But if we say, if you want to do this, it's outlined in Robert's Rules of Order. Go do your homework, council member, in your Robert's Rules of Order, and then you'll understand how to do it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like I said, it's not in the blue book. The substitution is not in the blue book, and I don't have the current brown book.
Right.
So, my fault, but
no, I don't think so, Vice Mayor. I don't think it comes up often enough for anybody to be laying blame. City Clerk, love to hear your thoughts on this topic.
Thank you, Mayor. I could go either way with the council. One thing I'm hearing is that we probably need to get some updated books to every council member to make sure that that tool is there for you. So that's one of the main things that I'm hearing. So I'll go ahead and work on getting those ordered. As far as putting the definitions into the rules of procedure, I think that would be, I could go either way. We could try to keep it short and do as Mayor Weaver suggested and say, for further reference, please, check the current Robert's Rules of Order, Okay. So I'll go either way with you. I do see a point to not going too far into it necessarily. I think the rules of procedure tend to be our quick go-to, especially when we're training new incoming council members. It's a quick reference, so.
And there are things that govern the city and the city council that are different than Robert's Rules. But if they're not outlined somewhere else, then Robert's Rules is supposed to be our guideline. But I think something about amendments or things that are going to really take time, it might be good to put a note in there about, look at your Robert's Rules for more definition and more information. And I think maybe amendments, referrals to committee, because frankly, what happens, we postpone an item, and what we're really doing is kind of referring it out for more work and then bringing it back the next time. And I guess that works okay, but it seems to chew up time. And I know that our agendas aren't going to get any smaller. And so if there's things that we can do to be more efficient and well-versed in procedure as a council, it seems like that would be a benefit. But But Vice Mayor, I'm afraid we're getting into the weeds here, not necessarily getting after what you want. And I see Councilor Harrington has something he wants to add. Councilor Harrington, it's all you if you wanted to.
Great, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if maybe the Vice Mayor was going to hop back in on something there, but so would we, just a quick question about this. So generally, I like the idea, Vice Mayor, of referring to committee as an option. There's been several items that have come up recently, several related to planning, which I think are probably going to be more frequent over the coming year or so. And then certainly the contractor licensing program and several other items that I think will require some pretty deep knowledge of the subject, that referring to a committee I think would be a wise idea for the council. And it also would, I've been recognizing maybe a lack of, like, council's not participating early enough in the process at times for us to fully understand the thing that's coming before us without sort of like, we see it on an agenda review and then we frantically learn as quickly as we can for the next 6 weeks until it's through or not through. So, I think in a lot of ways a committee makes a lot of sense. I'm just kind of curious what you have in mind between, are we going to start our terms by our 2-year term by electing standing committees that we're all sitting on that don't do anything unless something is appointed to them? When we refer to a committee, are we picking, 3 or 4 council members to sit on that committee at that time? How do we navigate that committee assignment? Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, that's maybe cart ahead of the horse here, but I feel like it feels like part of the conversation that should be in our code of conduct.
Yeah, frankly, I didn't get that far in my thought process, other than it just right now off the cuff, maybe a council member from each ward, maybe a couple council members who are actually willing, who have the time. I don't know, maybe let the mayor decide on the spot. I don't know. I mean, I think when I was reading my little blue book, I think it mentioned that the mayor would make a decision kind of right at that time, right during the meeting. And so if council members were interested, I think that would just be how it would occur. So,
Vice Mayor, can we let the city attorney chime in? He had a hand up.
Yeah, I think that perhaps this issue doesn't need to be decided now. You are free to refer to a committee. It's a standing committee, or you're free to put in your motion a committee appointed by the mayor, or you can just put whatever you want in the motion. So there's no need to decide that now.
Okay. And something that, Vice Mayor, sorry, back to you. I'm not sure that you were finished. I just wanted to give the city attorney a chance.
no, obviously, so we don't have a quorum, but
Yeah.
short of that, I think we're good.
Yeah, it kind of seems like, so maybe there's a council member that's asking a lot of questions and it's headed that direction. They make the motion to refer to a committee. Unless the council has strong feelings about it, we'll say, all right, let's have a committee take a look at this, and then that committee will be Councilor O'Doherty. Are there other volunteers, right? So that it's all done right there in the meeting. And we say, okay, so Councilmember O'Doherty, Councilmember Gabriel, and Councilmember Cumby will refer that, and they can figure out how they want to work it and work with the staff people to answer the questions. And then it'll come back to the meeting when they're done. I think that's a good system for that. Maybe we could put some language in the rules and procedures that says council members may refer an item to committee if there are substantial questions, and the committee can work with staff to come up with appropriate amendments for the next reading. Something along those lines, I think it would work pretty good. Councilmember O'Doherty.
I like that idea because then there's not several of us bugging staff for 6 different amendments all on the same topic, so that they don't have to say, I just went over this with O'Doherty and now I have to do it again with Weaver and with Herring. If we have a committee and then we could say, let's, maybe the amendments could look like this, let's talk to planning or let's talk to whomever.
And three-member committees can do stuff on the phone and through email and with our staff without that being a big problem. Of course, understanding email is public record stuff, but it's not like you have to go and sit in the room. Just make sure you work on it and get it done. And I think it dovetails with the amendments concerns pretty well also. So let's think about how we want that written up, if we want it written up and placed into rules and procedures. And it might be okay to do that because it'll let council members know, hey, if something pops up and it's a big deal to you, you have this tool available. I don't think it'll be used a lot, but I think it'll be used sometimes. Vice Mayor?
So are we ready for the next topic?
Uh-oh. You bet. You bet.
Sorry.
Chair's going to note that the time is 8:45. Vice Mayor, over to you.
I just want somebody, and I'm sorry, Nancy, but to check when we have to have 2/3 majority and when it just needs to be a majority. And I felt like when I read through the code of conduct, it changed its mind. First it would say 2/3, and then we kind of hit the same topic, and it would say, you have to have a decision of the majority. And so if we could just check for consistency on the majority and 2/3 of the council, that would really be great.
We can do that.
Thank you. And even if there could be part of that little description behind the motion, like if we're making a motion to refer to a committee, do we need a majority or do we need 2/3? I don't know, but it would be nice to know.
So if I get you these handy dandy little updated books, there is a section in the back, and they also make little cards that I can make sure that you all have a copy of, that lays out in Robert's Rules of Order when a 2/3 vote is required and when a majority is required. So that might help with some of these questions that you have, but we can certainly go back through the code of conduct, or the rules of procedure, and make sure that all of that voting information is up to date according to the current rules, Robert's Rules of Order.
Thank you. And those of you, thank you for allowing me this time. You'd think after all these years I'd have it better in my head, but obviously I don't. So thank you.
I think it all seems like pretty reasonable and worthwhile discussion that we never have time to have except at a work session, Vice Mayor. So I think it's A-okay. I was just ribbing you a little bit with the time. Nancy, I don't, City Clerk, I don't think that necessarily every member of the council needs the big brown volume, but I bet there's a condensed Robert's Rules that's up to date that maybe has more of what people might need. I don't know.
Sure, I'll do some checking on that. And Mayor, if I could, to answer the question about majority versus 2/3 on refer to committee, it looks as though that's a majority vote, just for information.
That makes sense. Thank you for checking that. And it also strikes me too that the city clerk has a lot of tasks to follow during our meetings. And the better versed we are in Robert's Rules, the less we have to bug Nancy with 25 requests during the meetings, and I'm certainly really bad about that. So it would be good for us to familiarize. Any other suggestions? Vice Mayor, are we going through your, have we made it through your questions and proposals?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, there was a few little Scribner's kind of things that can get cleaned up, but that's minor. We don't need to go point by point on that, I don't think. So,
City Attorney, City Manager, have we sufficiently frightened you with the new direction that we're considering for rules and procedures? Anything you'd want to add or words of caution?
Mayor, I have nothing to add. I think these are reasonable.
Okay,
I'm good, Mayor.
thank you. Anybody else have anything? We still need to do the other work session stuff, so let's get after it if everybody's okay on rules and procedures. All right, thanks everyone. Okay, so worthwhile discussion. Let's do our updates and comments. Updates first, round robin, or basically just whoever gets their hand up. Updates? Who wants to share one? Councilmember Harrington.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Planning Commission met last night for a pretty extended meeting. They denied the conditional use permit for the University of Wyoming's parking garage at 10th and Ivinson, between Ivinson and Grand. So I think this body could expect to see that item sometime in the future. And they denied it basically on a basis that it was not warranted based on their own parking studies, and that it would be disruptive to the neighborhood. I'm happy to pull the list of exactly their findings of fact, but I'm sure they'll come along with it when it comes to council. And then as the Board of Appeals, they denied an appeal for a variant, or for a nuisance out in West Laramie. So that is all I have, except for, as all of you know, I guess I should add, the Public Art Coalition facilitated an installation of a sculpture that was put up last week on the west side of the Snowy Range Bridge. So
I haven't heard about that.
Oh yeah, imagine that. So anyways, I'm sure you have all driven past by now, but if you haven't, make a trip. And I am working with the assistant city manager to get the lights moved. The sculpture pad, when it was installed, the lights were immediately underneath the sculpture, which won't be adequate for any sculptures on that pad moving forward. So to save the public from sort of like the kid at the campfire telling ghost stories look, those lights will be moved out, hopefully. So that's all I have. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Harrington. Other updates, folks? Go right ahead.
Thanks, Mayor.
Yep.
Tourism Board met last week. We were getting ready to move to a new location. However, the announcement won't be made until everything is finalized. I took part in a Speak No Evil panel 4 Saturdays in April. It was put together by Dr. Frederick Dixon, along with Ben Hurd from the Academic Advisory Council on campus, talking about, it's a focus group, talking about current social issues in America. Very interesting. Dr. Seidel also took part a couple of Saturdays from the university. And next week, we're trying to get together a conference with the county attorney, city attorney, Commissioner Ibarra, and myself to work on a memorandum of understanding on the Casper Aquifer Protection Plan that the city and county would like to get together and go to a RFQ sometime in the next couple of months. So we're working on that meeting scheduled for sometime next week. We're looking forward to getting together with the county because they want to work with the city on that. So that's an important issue. I think that's all I have.
Thank you very much for those updates, Councilor Gabriel. Councilmember Cumby. Oh, can't hear you, Councilmember. Councilor Cumby. Yeah, we gotta unmute you.
Okay. An update on the Board of Health. Dr. Comley submitted an application to serve as the physician on the board, and we'll be interviewing and talking to him next week, and that will give us a full Board of Health. And we're planning after that time to have a meeting that would be sort of a retreat, looking at the charge, the mission, and the scope of the board, and to revitalize a strategic plan. I've been in contact with people from the Board of Health and the downtown clinic, and we're looking at possibly trying to promote educational activities such as suicide awareness, smoking cessation, etc. But just looking at how the Board of Health might serve as a conduit with other agencies. So that's it. So finally, we have a complete board.
That's really good news and a really good update. And I don't think it could have come at a better time. Lots of public health discussions still taking place. And
yeah,
thank you very much for your work on that.
Thank you.
Council members, sorry I'm leaning over here. I got a dog that really wants my attention. Council member Somerville.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of quick updates. The DDA for downtown has not met in a while. We're going to gather that next meeting here soon and get them kind of reconstituted, figure out what's going on. And then also on Friday, so the Laramie Town Gown group has not met apparently much during COVID at all, but I will be attending a multi-city meeting. So this is Fort Collins, Greeley, Laramie. I think there's one more in there that send their city and their university people to these kind of meetings to have a general discussion in the region. And the agenda looks like it's primarily going to be talking about COVID transitions, how that's working in these communities, what does it look like for the fall, those types of things. So I'll bring back any information I get.
Yeah, sounds like we'd benefit from hearing about some of those discussions. Thank you. Go ahead, Council Member O'Doherty.
I personally don't have any updates, but I got an update from Councillor Harrington about why people going for their second COVID shot and going to the building on Harney didn't find anyone there. So now that you just put something in your mouth, could you just, in the unlikely event that the public is listening to this, I think it would be nice to let people know about that.
Yeah, you bet, Counselor. So they have changed the format for giving vaccines because of a decrease in demand. So they were not able to continue the multiple days a week of sort of like a full vaccine clinic at the Armory or at multiple locations. So they have, since they're no longer offering the vaccines at Mountain View Medical Center, which is the one that's on like Armory Road and Harney, kind of like what we'd all imagine, maybe 27th, 28th, somewhere up there. Vaccines are now at the Armory. There's just a few more walk-in clinics coming up in the next like week or so. For first doses, second doses will all be at the Armory as well. Unfortunately, there was no sign at Mountain View to inform people. There is now, I understand, but there was a few folks, which is why I spoke with Councillor O'Doherty about it, that got there for their vaccine dose and no one was around. So that is unfortunate. I know Ivinson's call center did call and email every person they could. Several people had no email listed, no phone number listed, and then maybe they had no email. They would get a call, but their voicemail box was full or something like that, so they had no way to contact those people. But they did reach out individually to every person scheduled and get them rescheduled for, what is tomorrow now. So, and if you all want to volunteer, there is still space to volunteer at those vaccine clinics.
Thanks, guys. Other updates? I have a quick one. The Civil Service Commission at its last meeting received information about some onboarding and some issues with some current members for our police and fire department. We had, I think, an initial 40 applicants for a position with the police department. half of those approximately withdrew their applications, and of the remaining number, a very small fraction made it through the city's screening and hiring process. But a new officer will now be entering into the training with LPD portion of their career, and we wish them success and appreciate their willingness to come and work for our LPD. I regret not having prepared the name ahead of time. I cannot remember the officer's name, but we wish her the best, and we'll hear some more on that employee, I think, in the future. Some changes with staffing not meeting the recommended number of officers still, even with the addition of this new sworn officer to the LPD. We're still well under what's been recommended by industry standard experts and municipal government experts, but replacing an officer that we had leave us recently. Some updates from the chief at the fire department about some procedures that are going to be put into place for retaining personnel, and that was it for my committees. Haven't had any recent committee activity. Working with the city staff to review some changes that were made in state law and how those might impact some of our intergovernmental cooperation efforts, and more information for you there soon as well. So thanks for letting me stumble through that update. And I don't have any comments. Do other members have comments before we go to the agenda review? Councilmember Gabriel, go for it.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to compliment you on your op-ed piece in the Boomerang Sunday. I would encourage the public to read that, talking about the importance of local control. A lot of thought and research went into that. You can tell by the piece. I was very impressed with what you had said and the background that you provided. And local control is so important. What we're trying to do as a city council and staff and city workers to maintain what we have to do to make this community what it is: streets, water, sewer, parks, pieces of art at times. And again, thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Gabriel. You know, coming from another member of the council and someone who served 20 years on the county commission, I really appreciate that comment. I think there are some serious issues around local control that cities and towns are facing in the state of Wyoming. Thank you. Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, Wildfile just came out too. So if you've missed it, I think it just came out today, yesterday, recently. So it gave a pretty good overall view of what's going on.
All right, folks. I did think of a comment that we might share just in case the 3 or 4 people might be watching that Councilmember O'Doherty spoke to earlier, which is that we're going to continue to do our best to keep getting information out about our public art processes in the community and about our rotating temporary installations around the Snowy Range project. And hopefully that'll answer some questions for folks. I know the public art group and other members of the council are doing their best, and we've asked our staff to spend a little time doing some research into that process as well, and we'll get that information out to people so that they don't have any misconceptions about art installations and the processes that we use to choose public art in the community. And it's not the city council, but the community as a whole, and the processes it uses to choose public art projects. We'll continue to make sure that information is available, and we know that the staff from the Laramie Public Art Coalition will do the same. How about a quick agenda review, Council? All right, take a look at it and just chime in, because I'm going to look at it again too, so I might not be looking at you, so just put it out there if you have a question or comment, starting with the consent agenda or the public hearing. I'll say that if you want to dig in deeper with anything like the building permit report, that information is provided to you at the council office. I bet you could get someone to email it to you if you wanted. We have the long-standing memorandum of understanding that we renew, I think, on an annual basis with the Crime Victim Witness Services and Laramie Municipal Court. We put that onto the consent agenda because it's a standardized item at this point. I don't know how many years we've entered into the MOU agreement with Crime Victim Witness, but we didn't feel like it warranted a placement on the regular agenda. We put it on the consent agenda. And now I don't know about you folks, but I'm looking at the regular agenda items on the draft agenda. We tried to arrange the agenda so that those items that we felt would go quickly would be, or quicker, would be towards the top. So we could get them out of the way, leaving us with room and time for discussion on items that we felt like might generate just a little bit more. Councilmember Somerville.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. So I'm assuming that all of these bid awards at the top, those are all over $100,000 in professional services. Yeah. Okay.
I believe so. I so. I don't have the numbers in front of me because I don't have the linked items, but I think so.
Then the only other thing I want to let you know is there have been more conversations with the Civic Center and downtown regarding item number 22. That one may take some time, depending on the furthering of those conversations this week.
I think the vice mayor and I and the staff sort of anticipated that might take some time, and so we tried to make sure that it would have time on the agenda, Councilmember Somerville. So hopefully we'll have adequate time to work that item and get through it.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to put it last on the agenda because I think if we do it first, it might impact our ability to get the rest of the stuff done. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. We shared your concerns and we wanted to make sure that it had the time that it needed. So that's why it's there. There may be a couple of things that towards the end of the agenda that might garner a little more discussion as well. Although that I think will be the main event in terms of time for this agenda. Anything any other council members see that they want to move or they have questions about now? Councilmember Somerville, it does strike me that some of those bid awards that you asked about just now, we did cover tonight, and we saw some of those dollar amounts on there. So I think most of those were over the mark until and unless we change it per suggestions made during the Rules and Procedures work session. Anything else, folks? We have an executive session that evening, as you all see. So that's also per our discussion tonight. We'll want to keep that in mind, even though we have items that we're going to have lengthy conversations about. We also have an executive session that evening that'll be important, and we'll want to be as bright-eyed and bushy-tailed as we can be for that. Everybody okay?
Councilor Cumby's background is very refreshing to look at.
Yeah, I like it too. Councilmember Gabriel, looks like you might have changed yours up for us. Also,
a couple of weeks ago, I think.
It's summer now. He's moving outside.
Yeah. I'm so fond of my kitchen that it's sticking around.
That's right.
Not too much longer now. I don't think it's in the extreme distant future that we'll be Zooming. I mean, we'll wait and see how it goes. I did see that case numbers are still kind of stubbornly higher than we'd like, but down a little bit for COVID. I am a little discouraged that people aren't following through on their vaccinations. I read that people are ditching out on their second doses, but we'll see where that goes. I'm going to go over to public comments now. I don't think there are any, but I'm going to go over to public comments now, council members. It's, oh, no, there's a raised hand. And it is Judy Snoke.
Oh,
Come on down.
greetings to all of you. I just wanted to say hi and thank you for all of your hard work. I like the backgrounds, and I love having a baby and a dog in the background as well. So you have lots of support with all of these things. So I just wanted to say that you know that there are people, or at least this person, is listening and watching everything. So that's it. Thank you very much, Council.
Right back at you. Thank you, Judy, for coming to our meetings and for the work that the League of Women Voters does for the community. It's a big deal. We appreciate it. And we appreciate you chiming in to say hi. I don't see other hands, although if she pushed it, I'd probably let Judy talk to us as long as she wanted to. But I don't see her raising her hand again. I don't see anybody else. City Clerk, I see a phone on there. Is that someone that's let us know that they want to talk to us?
That's Assistant City Manager.
Oh, thanks for hanging in there, Todd, and everybody on staff and all the council members. It's 11 after 9 o'clock. I think we'll close the work session. All right, work session's closed. You guys all have a good night. We'll see you soon.